Hi, Professor.
How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Good, thank you.
No.
So we have these cookies and brownies from today's event. Credit Programs Office.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you so much.
Feel free to grab a few more.
All right, I'll make sure everyone else has some for sure. That's awesome. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
It'll help us get through.
Yeah.
And then the following week, I have a pretty late week, which would still be the week before it's due.
You could have walked through here.
I'm not gonna lie, I do a lap
I would
to
personally.
catch my breath from them.
Yeah, those 3 flights.
I don't want to come straight in and just be the one out of breath, so I take a little lap, catch it, and then come on in.
No, I think we have a case before that, I want to say. Oh, we do, the case is due Monday the 4th. But either way, we can meet later that week, you know what I mean? Because then by then we'll have the case out of the way, so it's either like Tuesday or Friday, like any day in there, we have that done. Then it's due on the 13th, the following week.
Too early.
Unfortunately, 5 a.m. wake-up call certainly doesn't help.
That hurts.
You should have done that. Yeah, I woke up at 2 o'clock. Left it on. You could go back to sleep until about 3:15.
I wish I was able to. I was helping a family friend. They had moved a lot of stuff. They're moving houses down here. So they moved this lot of stuff into the storage unit. They got an alert saying the storage unit was having issues. So they had to move a bunch of stuff out of the storage unit into either the garage or a different storage unit. So at 5 a.m. I was driving to the storage unit, just trying to frantically get as much as we could, into other areas.
Yeah, no, that's not good.
No.
How are you doing?
Thankfully, we didn't need to worry about the father.
Yeah.
But that was fun, to say the least.
Was it climate control? Was it climate control?
I think it was an issue with the climate control. I don't know exactly what the issue was. I just got told, hey, we have a problem.
Yeah, we got
Get over here. I'm like, okay. I do as I'm told.
Yeah, Houston, we got a problem.
You got a snack.
2 plates full of snacks. I'll get to it.
Here, we'll just distribute this. Got some goodies to get us through tonight. Hey, how are you?
Good.
I guess you're present.
You've been good this week.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
You can give it to me.
They might be tempting, but that's okay. That's good. That's good. Yeah. All right.
Neither is Matt.
Try to go to it, it's not working. Doesn't work.
Yeah,
It's working.
I'm doing
You need to hold it in a certain position like a
I know,
antenna.
I would have guessed that, because that.
Well, I figured
Yeah,
there
alright,
was,
let's just move
yeah,
over.
but he didn't teach me.
I did not go over what a clear.
no, it's weird. It's like,
Yeah, so I see what's going on. It's like,
The adapter is probably not fitting
Oh, yeah.
into the probe real smooth.
yeah, because it's the circle. It has to get held in there. So like, I must get some duct tape or something. Either that or something across. I think I'll wait. I have an idea.
Yeah, we can take any problem.
Alright, now I just gotta hold my phone exactly like that.
maybe another one, maybe a third.
Yeah, maybe try the one down there. Sorry. I don't know. Yeah, last week it didn't do any.
My sugar for the day. You're
Yeah, they're
There you go.
Problem solved. Get started in just a moment. It's about almost time, pretty much. Looks like everyone's doing all right. It's good to see you all. You're all here, almost all here, right? Another big week in marketing, as always. So what we'll do tonight, we have tonight's topic or class broken up into 3 parts, more or less. And so one of the things I'd like to do is jump back into some material we had last week that dealt with some analysis of market segments or segmenting customers using something called cluster analysis, and then visually displaying those clusters in a perceptual map. So we have some software loaded this week that will help that. So I think that'll be a good thing. You all are sitting in just the right spots. This is perfect. All right. There are some goodies here. So I want you to feel free to partake of those. Do not be shy, right? Maybe we'll take a few breaks tonight just so that we can have those. And it won't be weird or anything. But so we'll do that. We'll talk a little bit about some of the material for this week, and then we'll break out and do a little mini exercise in 3 different groups. So that's kind of the game plan for tonight. And this week's topic, as we jump into week 10, so last week we talked about segmenting and thinking about different groups of consumers and the criteria used to identify groups of consumers who behave the same. This week we shift gears a little bit and talk about what makes a target market or a segment attractive. Like why would you choose one over another? So we'll just see how much of that material we get into tonight and just see how things unfold. First though, our reflection this last week dealt with our friend Looping Louie. And so, just curious to hear which of these 2 or both, or kind of how would you approach these 2 different markets if you were that toy company today launching this product? Is this a kid's product, an adult product,
I would actually target it to both, but I would change the product.
okay?
I would make like a different version for the young adults, because there was just so much research that it worked in like Germany with the drinking, like as a drinking game.
Right.
And in America, it's a huge, like there's a lot of colleges and A lot of
Okay.
partying.
Okay, so in the US market, you feel like there's still a position for the product in the young adult crowd.
Yes, but it's a different product, like I would make some adjustments.
Okay, all right.
I think it should just be marketed to kids, but in a way that it would still end up in the hands of young adults. Because
Okay.
when you're talking about college students and just, with the whole scene in general, if you're marketing as a drinking game, you have to compete with the ad hoc nature of most drinking games. All you need is like a ping pong ball and a cup for a good chunk of it. So to convince someone to pay for a game isn't really going to work. However, if you give them a kid's game that they're like, oh, we can totally use this for something else, that might actually have the reverse effect to end up marketing it better.
Interesting. Okay, so using the unattended approach.
Well, I mean, personally, I would say that you need to leave it with the kids, mainly from, and I guess because of the insurance background I got,
Okay.
liability-wise. Just like anything else, just like with bars and bartenders. You going out there specifically marketing that as a drinking game, you let a couple of deaths pop up and see what's going to happen.
Okay. So dovetailing on that a little bit, what are the negative implications that you could experience other than lawsuits if you are this toy company positioning a product as a drinking game?
You might lose like customer loyalty, like if parents are buying these toys for their kids, they're looking for something that's safe, and if you are trying to make a drinking game, it doesn't seem fitting for a toy brand.
Seems like we had this concept of confused positioning, and it may be exactly that, where you have like these multiple messages going out that we're a kids toy company, yet we're promoting this non-kid product, right? So yeah, absolutely. Okay, so what type of things would you change for the product to make it young adult versus the kid? You said you'd change it up a little bit.
So I would market it also on different platforms. Like I would use, for example, social media or just places where young adults are.
Okay.
And for the normal looping I would just target it or like put the advertisement on the TV maybe, or in places where that segment is active.
Okay, so messaging, you'd use different messaging channels. How else? What else would you do?
It'd have to be a totally different name, totally different toy, or whatever.
What would a good name be?
Beer Barrel Bob or something.
Boozing Betty. Wait, what was that one you had?
Beer Barrel Bob.
Beer.
And you can have him riding around in a beer barrel.
I like that. And you could have little beer steins or something to knock over.
Yep.
Okay, we're having some fun with that. This is joking. This is fun, but all right, yeah. So that's the kind of the takeaway here is that you can distinctly see that market segments are unique. They have their own characteristics, and trying to reach two different market segments that are desperately different can be challenging. Maybe not impossible, but certainly there are challenges involved with that. And again, if you're a toy company and you built brand equity around the image and the personality and kind of what people think of you as a brand, and then you start doing things that conflict or contradict that image, then you impair your brand equity, the brand equity that you've created, and your company becomes known as something different. So just even in these markets where maybe, and I don't know what it's like 100% or whatever, but if Looping Louie, if that name is connotated with drinking games, then it would be incompatible to launch that same game with the same name to children, because the market wouldn't really fully get that. It wouldn't make sense. So changing the name, changing the design of it, changing kind of the action and things like that would probably be something that's needed. I do think the idea that if it's marketed as a kid's game, it may be adopted eventually for the young adults. I would challenge that maybe what has to happen though is somewhere behind the scenes somebody does kind of like a shadow campaign using socials, and they place some influencers and they have the influencers play the game as a drinking game, not with the toy company associated with it, but as a separate thing, paid under the table by the toy company. You know, I mean, there has to be some of that quote-unquote guerrilla type marketing that's done to jumpstart that thing, right? And then through social networks, I'm pretty sure you know, college campuses they might adopt it, something like that. But yeah, so all right, so just an interesting story, a fun story, I think. This is you know I think there are some applications when we look at some of these examples of you know what we could think of. And I think one of the ways I take this is, like, if you were the product manager managing that specific Looping Louie product, like, you know, you're in charge of this product, you're looking at sales every month, you're looking at all that good stuff, and you're scratching your head wondering, wow, sales are really going up, I don't really understand why. Oh, that's why. Is this a good thing? Is this something that's, you know, going to be sustainable? Is this hurting us overall, and so on and so forth. I do think it's interesting that the product itself had a lot of difficulty getting launched and took years and years actually to really take off. And so was it a good product idea to begin with? I don't know. Was the timing wrong initially when it was launched? I don't know. But fate and circumstance created an opportunity for their sales to bloom in a very unintentional way. So even while it was planned for the young market or the kids market, it didn't quite manifest itself, at least initially, that way. So anyways, that brings us up to some material that we'll cover this week. Do y'all have any questions or anything pressing administratively or class-wise? We're good? Okay, all right. I always want to double check. So I want to back up a little. Again, last week we talked about segmenting, and there's two different methods that I want to illustrate a little bit, and it'll take a few minutes to do, that I think are helpful. They're data-driven, and so one of them, let's get some of this off here, is a technique called cluster analysis. And again, we're going to back up a little bit and just talk about forming market segments. So when we look at a market of consumers, let's just for argument's sake say we have this awesome Venn diagram, and we have, you know, consumers that are in a market. So these are all just consumers around there. This is a generic market for a particular product of some type. And the idea of segmenting is we find criteria that can help us define consumers and group them in some similar fashion. So we find a group of consumers that all have something in common and sort of group them together like that. Then we do another one, and then maybe we do, let's do this. We would do another one, and maybe that person did this one doesn't fall into any of them. But the point is that the ones in these groups have something in common with each other. And we're going to use some data and some variables to figure out what those things are, and then let that drive this grouping mechanism. In reality, it can be a little tricky, especially if you have lots and lots of variables. We can do correlations. But again, if you've got lots of variables, it can get a little messy and things like that. So we have some techniques, and again, when we do cluster analysis, we could use many different variables to create basically an ideal. It's like a formula, a weighted formula that groups these folks together. And what'll happen is you'll see like a bunch of consumers, and these clusters will form, and there'll be a center point that is formed, And basically what's going on is when the data is analyzed, they'll look at a particular respondent and it'll calculate sort of this distance that these respondents are from a simulated center point. And the closer you are, there he is, it means that you'll be in that cluster. And if you're closer to this cluster center and further away from there, then it sort of naturally puts you into this grouping, into this space. And then that would be a segment. That would be a group, and everybody in this group would have something in common. Now again, these clusters are going to be a series of weighted equations. They're going to be formed by a series of weighted equations based on the data that you have. And they'll move around and they'll change a little bit, and there'll be a number of different solutions that you can have. But that's generally what's happening in the background. Okay, so I'll pull up some data, walk through an example of a company from last year that we had, and I think it'll be interesting. I think it'll be telling, and just walk through this process, just so you see it happen. And certainly, if you wanted to know more about it and how it's done and all that, I'm happy to walk through those things. A little bit, maybe a little out of the scope of the class, but maybe not. So what we'll do is, let me see, move that guy out of the way, and we'll pull up part of this presentation. So the deal with this, okay, so this is from some data we collected from our client, and the idea is that they have, this is a training academy to train people how to fly a plane, okay? And they have different clients and customers. So if you wanted to learn how to fly a plane, you could go take classes and go through the process, and you get your pilot certificate here in Myrtle Beach. There's 3 or 4 different bigger companies. This is a real small one. But one of the things that come up with this, and I don't know how many of you are risk averse or risk loving. Those are 2 different things. But some people are scared to be in a man-made piece of tin 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 feet in the air learning how to fly. And there's not much between you and the air outside, right? It's not any fancier or bigger or more impressive than a car. I mean, because it's just right there. And that's scary for a lot of folks, understandably. Yet at the same time, some people like that idea. It's kind of a thrill-seeking type of a thing. It gets them going. It's like an adrenaline rush and things like that. So that's kind of, so the challenge that these folks are having, or were having, we talked a little bit about it, was how do you approach 2 different market segments that have differing and even contradictory sort of motives and objectives. Does that make sense? So you've got a group of consumers who are all for this because they love the risk, and you've got a group of consumers who are like, that's great, but risk isn't for me. And you want to attract as many consumers as you can, but you've got this problem. Okay, so that's kind of the setup of this, and I'm not going to go through all of this. Some activities are perceived as highly risky, which are barriers for folks. Meanwhile, others attract people, and then what strategies can we use to do or think about with both of these? Okay, so I'm going to fast forward a little bit till we get to some of the kind of data, if you will. We ran a survey, and again, I want to get to the stuff that we did. We ran a survey, and we asked people to kind of rate on different scales things that would motivate them to participate in this flight training program, and also rate elements of things that would be barriers for them to participate. So on the left, we have things that would motivate, learning something new, being able to fly to a new place, independence to fly myself, starting a new adventure. This is kind of a new hobby type of a thing. The riskiness of flying as a motivator, right? So we have that in there, pursuing a new job, having a unique skill, trying something new and different. Okay, indicate on the right to the extent of which the following would hinder your willingness to learn how to fly. Okay, so we have things that would motivate me, things that would hinder me from doing this. So we have cost, right? That's usually a big thing, right? For most product categories, cost or price. It's relatively expensive, anywhere from, on the low end, $10,000, $11,000, $12,000, up to probably $15,000 to $18,000, something like that, to put in the time and the effort and the training. Self-confidence. I don't feel very confident that I could do this. I don't know that, that could be something that holds me back. My ability to learn, because there's a lot of training involved, time commitment, distance from an airport or a place, age. I feel like some people age out of this. And then the risk or danger of flying is over here as a barrier. So it's could be a motivator, but it could also be something that holds you back. Again, that's where we're measuring that sort of that inconsistency, right? That goes on there. Okay, and
They forgot no feathers and no wings.
we weren't made for it, right? If we were made for it, we'd have those things, right? Okay, I love that. And long-term usefulness is a good one too, because it's a big commitment. And are you actually why would you use it? Is it like a career or whatever? What is it for? Okay, so we gathered a bunch of data. I can't remember the sample size. We'll pull up the data set here in a second. So then we had a dependent measure of just simply how likely are you to do this training? Like what is your likelihood to purchase is basically what the measure is the dependent variable. And we ran a regression, a stepwise regression. So we took all those variables, ran a regression, and 4 of the variables were returned as significant. So when we say that, these are variables whose betas in a regression were large enough to have an influence on whether you would be likely to fly or likely to train. Right? Those 4 things. Cost clearly is one, and usually always is. It's not a surprise. That one is reverse coded, so you can imagine there being a little negative sign there because they're inversely related. Cost or price with any purchase activity, it's an inverse relationship. So don't get thrown off. There's not a negative there. It's just reverse coded. But the other 3, starting a new adventure, that's kind of cool. So that was one of those motivators. The riskiness of flying, that was one of those motivators. But simultaneously, the risk and danger of flying was also significant in the exact same model, which is, so they're not talking about multicollinearity or anything like that. In the exact same model, both of our risk measures were significant, or play a significant role in predicting whether somebody will join this training program or not. And you'll notice that the barrier risk is negative, right? It has a negative impact on whether somebody would buy. This is like completely challenging, right? How do you wrap your head around this idea that risk can simultaneously be a motivator and also be a detriment or barrier to participation? Theoretically, this shouldn't really happen if you think about kind of the process. But if you understand kind of what's going on, you're like, well, yeah, these are 2 different types of consumers. One is risk-loving, one is risk-averse, being kind of pooled together in one thing. Does that make sense?
50-50 shot.
Well, yeah, it could be. But so here's the deal. When you have a customer walk in the door, you've got to very quickly assess what type of customer they are, which of the 50-50, because you need to sell them and pitch to them a message that's going to relate to them. If they're risk averse, then you need to talk up your safety program and how few accidents there are and how safe the planes are and blah, 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 blah. If they're risk loving, you've got to very quickly adjust your pitch and say, you know, you're going to have the thrill. You're so close to the air, you can practically feel it. You can almost imagine jumping out and be such an adventure. It'd be so great, you know? You give that same message to the risk-averse customer and they're out the door, right? So it's like this real big challenge. And we talk about this confusing messaging happening. Well, how, you know, you can't put those two messages in the same ad or in the same message or the same tweet or whatever. You have to figure out a way to do this. So here's the question. How do you know if it's 50-50? How do you know which is which?
Ask me if they play in the stock market.
Yeah, and how much you're willing to risk in it maybe too. Something like that. All right, so that's cool. We can do that. So let's take this idea of these variables, because we know these are influential to desire to train. And what we'll do is we'll create some groups of customers. So we're going to come back to this in just a minute, all right? But we're going to use the data to help us form these groups. And then we're going to come back and explain these groups with this visual, okay? So just bear in mind, we've got these 4 variables going on, and I'm going to pull up some software that might look a little daunting at first, and those are really small numbers up there, I get it. So this is a data set. So we did a survey, real quick. It had, let's just see, what is that? I have a sample of 288 people who completed the survey in this data set. We asked them a whole bunch of questions, including those barriers and those motivators. And if we look at kind of where this data is, this is a software program called SPSS. Some of you may be familiar with it, but if not, that's okay. You have access to SPSS here at Coastal if you're ever interested in using it. A lot of folks in market research will train on this and use this as a basis. Pretty user-friendly if you're using it a lot. Very powerful, has lots and lots of tools, far more powerful than like Excel and some things like that. You don't have to code though. So you really don't have to do a lot of coding. You can do some, but it's generally a code-free type of environment, unlike R or some of the other things out there. Okay, so this is what the data looks like, and then we can slip over here, and I know these are really small. It won't make it any bigger, I'm sorry. Those are really small to see. But these are basically all the variables that are in the data set. So we measured a lot of things, and somewhere in here we have motives, and I know this is again hard to read, but our motive variables are all in there, and our barriers are all sort of in there. Okay, so let me walk you through this just as a quick example. Analyze, and you don't have to remember these steps or anything. There are a number of different ways to do cluster analysis, but I'm going to do this classify, and I'm going to do a 2-step cluster analysis. And what I'm going to do is just run down this list of variables in the data set, and I'm going to find our 4 that were significant in that regression. So our motive for adventure, our motive for risk, come down here, risk as a barrier, and then cost as a barrier. Those were the 4 things that were there. All right, now I've done this a lot. This is a little exploratory, but I know there are 3 groups of consumers, 3 market segments. So again, this is kind of like trial and error a little bit to get the right number of clusters or segments. Done this, I've used this data a while, so I'm kind of familiar with it. So I'm just going to specify the number of clusters. Again, we could have the software look for more clusters. If you recall, I read this, I have like 3 here, and the software created this number and where these centroids or centers are. I could allow for the software to create more or more or less. So we could have 4 or 5 or 6 or 1 or 2 or something like that. Okay, so this is there's a little bit of control here, but it's also a little exploratory in some sense as well.
Would you have to put the number in there?
No.
Or would you just let it go and let it?
It will find its own solution if you let it. Yeah. It'll find an optimal solution, but sometimes the optimal solution doesn't make sense pragmatically. Right. So yeah. And when we look at this specifically, there are 288 responses. If your number of clusters are too high, what you'll end up with is, like maybe we have 5 or 6 clusters, there'll be 3 or 4 that are really good size-wise, and then there'll be like 1 or 2 that are like really small, and just kind of outliers more than anything else. And so then you force it to push back into that 3 or 4 number as opposed to 5 or 6. So again, it's a little give or take. You have to kind of do it a few times and just kind of think about what the data is telling you before you move forward. Okay, so again, output, I think that's all we're going to. So, and this is just going to give us a display. It's going to give us a little bit of information that we'll look at and pull this up. So the solution that was returned, and again, there's not going to be a lot of information here, but it's going to be everything that we need. And again, I can't get that much bigger. I'm sorry. So I asked for a three cluster solution. It created 3 groups of consumers that assemble around or form around similarities on these 4 different variables. Okay, and up here we have sort of these cluster sizes. We have one group that's 32%, one that's 45, and one that's 22. Okay, so that's kind of a good number, right? I mean, in terms of, like, if you were looking at market share and you wanted to go after one segment, you could go after a segment that has 45% of the market, if that makes sense. So that's kind of reasonable. That's not a bad idea. And then over here, again, these are super small. I get that. It gives us sort of their average scores on each of our 4 variables that we have. So this one here, this is the motive for risk, so risk lovers. And you'll notice that this cluster here, it's labeled 2. Is that 2? That's 3, sorry, I don't know why it doesn't do it in order. But cluster 3 here scores the highest on their motive risk. So cluster 3, these are risk-loving people. So the people in the survey that are labeled 3 are risk-loving. Meanwhile, if we go over in the other 2 categories, are kind of low, but this first one here, the risk-loving one, this is the lowest. So 1 is the most risk-averse. 3 here happens to be the most risk-loving, and again, if we look at cluster 3, cluster 1 here, cluster 3, and so forth. So kind of just digesting some of this information a little bit. The one who's the most risk averse also sees cost as the largest barrier. They perceive cost as having the greatest concern for doing this. The ones who are risk loving the most also see the highest adventure aspect of this as a motive to do this activity. Again, the risk issue, lowest as a motive, highest as a barrier. In this group here, loves risk the most, sees risk as a barrier the least. Which kind of makes sense, right? Okay. So now we have these profiles we're sort of creating, and we're sort of understanding these folks a little bit better. Now I can take this information go back to the presentation that we had earlier, and we can understand kind of what this last visual will tell us a little bit better. So kind of, again, you're with a client, you don't want to show many numbers, you want to show them lots of colors and pictures, always. There are a lot of words up there, I get that. But the takeaway here is, from this analysis, we've identified 3 groups of consumers, right? So this is that risk-loving group, right? And we've called them the adventurous. I know it says 41% because we had to change the data number a little bit. So, but it was that group 3 that we just saw a little bit ago. We've got the cautious but motivated. Okay, that's probably the group 1 maybe. I can't remember group 1 and group 2. 33% of the market are those folks. The disinterested avoiders. That's what we call this last group, 26% of the market. Okay, so how do we get these sort of things? Well, if we go across the top, concerned about risk, the lower the number, the better. If you're concerned about risk, the lower the number, the better. The higher the number, the worse. So we got a green, because this is the lowest of the 3. So adventurous, they have the least concern for risk. The cautious but motivated have the highest concern for risk. And this last group's just kind of in between. And just look at the absolute values of these numbers. These numbers, 35, 87, 61, those are indexes. So on a scale of 100, it's basically they're all index scores. So they're relative, you can kind of compare them across and above. So that tells us a little bit. Concern about cost. Oh, the second one, they're concerned about cost and they're concerned about risk, right? The last one, they don't seem to be very concerned about cost, but they're the other things, interested in training is very bad. So they don't care about cost because they're not going to do it. It's not their thing, right? So that's kind of the deal there. Motivated by risk? Absolutely. This adventurous group, motivated by risk, sort of, it's somewhere in between here, not really high, not really low, and then they're definitely not for it. So this is, I guess, that group 1 we saw before. This is probably group 2 and group 3 in the clusters. Motivated by adventure, and so on and so forth. So we incorporate kind of these scores to help describe the profile of each of these 3 clusters. Or groups. Again, these clusters were driven entirely by that analysis we just did. I mean, that's how we identified these clusters, right? And then from that, we can do things like we can identify the average age and the income level and the marital status, all the other types of demographic stuff, where they're located, how far they are away from the airport, whether they use social media or not. Uses Twitter significantly less than the others. Currently has familiarity with the company that we were investigating. Most influenced by different features that the company has. Most interested in learning how to fly, travel. This group travels more than others. They have a significantly higher desire to perform other adventure-seeking activities, including all these other things. So if I had like a list of people who did bungee jumping in Myrtle Beach, that list would be a great list for me to reach out to them, use as a list to try to promote my flight training school. Does that make sense? They call it comorbidity. I know that's sort of like these events happen together a lot of the time. People are willing to jump with a rubber band stuck to them. They're willing to learn how to fly anyways. And they have a lot of aviation knowledge to begin with. Okay, so this is a great application of this method. Yeah.
I have 2 questions.
Good.
The first one, is the sample, were they customers, or was it just from?
No, they were not customers. These were people who were absolutely not customers. They were people who were screened to live within a certain mile or distance from Horry County or from Conway. We didn't screen them for prior knowledge of aviation or anything like that.
So it would just make sense to target it to adventurers?
Pardon?
So it would just make sense to target it to adventurers, right?
Maybe, but what do we sacrifice when we only target adventurers? What's that?
Not quite almost 2/3 of the market.
Yeah, so 41% of the market, no problem, but what about the other ones that could potentially participate in our?
Yeah, I mean, the second one I would agree, but
Yeah.
I mean, like flight school, I would say it's probably a niche product.
Definitely a niche
So
product.
why should we target the whole market then?
Well, I'm not suggesting maybe we don't target this last group,
Yeah.
but maybe this. And great thing is, like, if you were saying, okay, we've got these two different markets, and we're targeting, like, I may adapt what I do a little bit to this market segment. So for instance, you notice that their cost is a hurdle. So for this group here, what I might do is work in some type of creative discounts or some type of payment structure or financing, or do something that kind of diffuses or avoids that particular issue that they have. And then what I might also do is incorporate some safe, friendly approaches. Like maybe with them, I might have them work on a simulator on the ground and do training for the first week or two or month or whatever in a training simulator to get them used to the environment. And then we introduce actually going in the air or something to that effect to kind of bridge that gap, and I sell them on that. Right? Now, is it easy to identify multiple market segments and position yourself towards both of them simultaneously? No. There's a much larger cost that you have to incur to do that.
Yeah, and what's the difference between segments and clusters? I didn't understand.
They can be the same. You can, like, so we did cluster analysis, but each cluster is in essence a segment. Does that make sense?
So it's the same?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, we're just using two different terms for the same thing. We created segments by using cluster analysis. And the clusters that emerged from the software, we're calling them segments. Yeah. Okay? That seemed, so I can't remember what I actually told them. for the client, target both. Adventurous and concerned but motivated market segments. Proactively reach both audiences with messaging.
Yeah, but here's the sales 101. You always get a no if you don't ask.
Yeah, well, you do have to ask. You do have to.
You got a whole other group out there. If you don't ask, you will always get a no. So
It's true. Okay, so I think, again, the point of this is to illustrate some of the techniques used to actually form clusters or form market segments. I think it's beneficial to kind of see some of this. Getting the data is sort of one step. Making sure the data is in appropriate fashion or it's prepared to run the analysis, maybe a second step. But it's not that complicated. It's not that hard to do just at the end of the day. And so again, if you're anybody's, oh no, don't want to do that. Anybody's inclined to look at that, then that's something to do. Okay, so cluster analysis. I could spend all day. I taught a whole course, a whole semester-long course on this stuff. So that was fun. It is fun, actually. So let's pivot, though. Let's talk a little bit about, so we talked about like forming clusters. The other thing that we looked at or talked about last week was displaying clusters in a setting that's visually effective. We talked about perceptual maps and the perceptual mapping process there's 4 or 5 steps involved with mapping, and so we'll talk a little bit about that, but there's 2 things that I think you should look at. And both, these are all in Moodle, by the way, the stuff here, the data sets are in Moodle. If you wanted to try to pull those up and do some of that, you can. There's one, actually, let me just make sure. We've got a couple different ones that you could look at. The next thing I want to look though at is something called the perceptor model. And this is just simply an Excel file that helps us do perceptual maps. And it's just kind of an example of one application here, which I think is maybe helpful. Again, this is available to you. When we do perceptual maps, we want to identify the characteristics that are important to a customer when they make a purchase decision. We call those determinant attributes. If you remember from last week, we had that term. So when you see the axes on like an XY axis with a 2-space map, the axes are characteristics or qualities or features of the product that are important to the customer. And a lot of times it's price or it's quality or something along those lines. And then we gather data. There's usually 2 forms of data that we gather. One is we want to know to the customer how important these factors are, or these characteristics or traits are, these attributes of the product. And second, we want to know their perception of each of the brands' performance on these attributes. Okay, so this model here, or this Excel file that you'll see, helps us look at a couple things all at the same time. Okay, so page 1, the perceptor model, you're going to see a couple things here. You're going to see this is attribute 1 and attribute 2. You could call it product feature 1, product feature 2. Maybe it's price, maybe it's quality. It's the 2 things that you want to map, basically, as far as that stuff goes. And then we have on the left here, we have these different market segments. So again, let's just we just did some clustering, so we have some data on market segments. Let's assume that you just did your clustering. You have these 3 different market segments like we just had, and then you have an average score like price sensitivity, or we had that cost thing. We could drop in those cost averages in here for each of the 3 segments, and cost or price could be one of these attributes. We could probably do risk. We could drop risk in here, and we could put the average score for our 3 clusters in here for risk. It's just kind of an example, right? We also had the size of the markets, right? That 41% or whatever, 33% and 26%, I think. Whatever those were. So we could put those in here. We could drop those in as well. Okay, so that's part 1. Part 1 is you want to know the degree to which each market segment, kind of how important each attribute is to that market segment. And again, we have 2 attributes showed here. It could be anything that is important to the customer as they make a decision. Those determinant attributes. And that's this first part. Okay, so that's part 1 of this process. Gather the data, make sure you have the data on each attribute. In this Excel demonstration, we have market shares that you can drop in there, which we could have used cluster sizes from the data we just got. Drop them in there and you're good. Okay, part 2 is the brand information. Okay, okay, we have 1, we know how important these features are to each customer segment. Number 2, how does the market perceive each of the brands we want to map on these 2 attributes? Like, how well do they perform, right? How well do they perform on cost or expense or quality or whatever it is, right? So this is a performance evaluation by the market, by the whole market, on performance of each of the brands on the determinant attributes that we've decided to map. Okay, and then you drop your numbers in here. don't get too worried about these numbers right now. I mean, we could change those, we could adapt those, we can move those around. And we'll just kind of look at those. We can look at those later if you want. Positive or negatives are just the way the scales are, like zeros in the middle, and then there's negative and positive on either side. So if you can imagine again, 0 being the origin, going left to right, left's going to be negative, right will be positive, and up and down from the origin would be, positive or negative. So don't get too lost or worried about the numbers. Just know that what these are average perceptions of these brands' performance on the two attributes that we're looking at. Okay, so we got two very different things we've measured. We've measured customers, the importance of these attributes to the customer, part one. Part two is we've measured the perceived performance of brands on these attributes in the second part. Dropping those numbers in though, we can skip over here. We're going to do a couple pages over, and this is maybe a little small, but what we have mapped here is a two-dimensional space where we have the first attribute down below here on the x-axis, then the second attribute on the y-axis based on the numbers, those numbers that you would have put in the first page. And what you're going to find is a joint space map where the first segment is located roughly right here. I know that's kind of doing some weird things, but right here. We have the second segment way down here on these two attributes. We have the third segment way over here on those two attributes. And again, in our Falcon example, which I really ought to do it, I haven't ever done it. We could easily take our three market segments and we could map them on risk, one of the risk measures, and cost. We could actually do those, and it'd be a nice little map, I think. You finally find something like this where you have one who is, I don't know, maybe, I don't know what it would look like anyways, but our market segments fall in this space. Simultaneously, the perception of each of the brands are in this space too. If you go back to page 1 again, you'll notice that there are 4 brands. There's data available for 4 brands, just the way this is set up. So we have your brand, and then we have brands B, C, and D. And this is where they're located on this map. Okay? And so in relative terms, in this two-dimensional space, you can see that D and C are kind of in the same quadrant, and they probably serve segment 1 pretty well. You can see segment 3 really doesn't have a brand that it really is satisfied by. Remember, segment 3, this is like how important these features are. So both of these features are pretty important to segment 3, yet none of the brands seem to perform well on both features simultaneously. Seems like you either do well on attribute 2, like brand C and D, or you do well on attribute 1, like brand B and your brand. But nobody really does well on both. So segment 3 is kind of out there being underserved. If you're like a new entrant into this market, into this space, this may be a great opportunity for you. This could be a gap that's worth pursuing. Does that make sense? All right, I mean, this is how strategically you think about this. And, I don't know, maybe this brand, maybe brand D could maybe move themselves over a little bit by improving their ability to do attribute 1. And maybe better position themselves towards 3. That could be a repositioning strategy that D attempts to do. Now, by doing that, they push themselves away from segment A. And I don't know if that's what they want to do. I don't know if it's not what they want to do, something like this. If I'm brand here, if I feel like brand B is vulnerable, what I might do is try to position myself closer to brand B to try to steal their market share and put them out of business. again, it's a repositioning strategy, it's a direct competition strategy where I'm looking to, like, I'm looking to run this brand out of the market by taking, because I think I can outperform them in segment 2. And so maybe I'll do that. Okay, so what I'm saying is, like, once you go through the mechanical process, it's a very heavily data-driven process, you create this image, that's great, but next step is let's do some strategy, let's use the map, this is a managerial tool, so let's use it to kind of make some decisions on what we'll do next to position ourselves in the marketplace, right? So that gets us, though, to this whole segment 1, 2, 3, which is the best one? Which are the ones that you want? So if we go back, let's go back to page 1 on this map. And again, this is available to you if you want to use it or whatnot. Play around with it, you can. Remember we put these market shares in here, right? So one of the features that this Excel does for us, which is kind of cool, is we slide over here and it predicts based on your positioning to those segments how much share you can expect to have. So remember, we were really our brand. We were pretty close to segment 2 in that lower right hand corner, and it would suggest that we have 29.36% of the of that segment's share, whereas brand B is closer. They were much closer to the actual segment than we were, and they're doing much better in that specific segment than we are. If we were to reposition ourselves and make ourselves closer to 2, we would take market share away from brand B, and it would be demonstrated on here. And you can, I mean, they have the calculations up here for the different stuff, so I haven't gone through and really looked at it too closely. I trust what it is. But it's kind of fun to play around with, if nothing else, right? So is segment 2 a viable segment? Well, if we come down here and look at the size of the segment total, it's a big segment. We don't have a circle to demonstrate size, but segment 2 actually represents 50% of the market. So if I'm going to hitch my horse to something, it's going to be, hitch my wagon to something, it's going to be segment 2, right? I mean, because it's 50%. If I wanted to reposition myself closer to segment 3, a smart move, I'm going to go back to the map here. A smart move might be setting yourself right in here somewhere. So you draw from segment 3 and you draw from, segment 3 and segment 2. Maybe you get somewhere in here. Compete directly with B, but you draw from both of these segments a little bit more so, because when we go back to this, we look at the combined share between these two, got 80% of the market. What a great opportunity, right? I mean, it's like, wow. If you could be a player in 80% of the market, get some good share out of both of those simultaneously, that would be awesome. That would be really, really, really good. It's like you can start playing around with this and just thinking about other things, like not that we're talking about brands here, but segment 1 is 20%. Segment 2 is 50%. Imagine, I don't think these numbers are probably that far off, but for Looping Louie, if the kids toy segment was 50%, segment 2, and the young adult segment was 20%, and you're toying between the two of them, now all of a sudden, wow, I'm going to have difficulty positioning myself to both of these simultaneously, maybe. If I had to choose one or the other, which is more attractive? Probably the 50% market. Maybe, right? Now, we know college students are interesting because they're typically cash constrained, right? But they'll spend money on the darndest things, right? I mean, if the time is right, if the atmosphere is good, if everyone's having a good time, the credit cards come out and there's no problem, right? So we could probably charge college students more for this toy, you know, than we would kids. Kids, families, they don't want to overspend on a kid's toy, but college kids overspending on a drinking game? That's just money well spent, isn't it? I mean, that's like, it's like, I could buy these textbooks or I could buy this game. It's the first week of class, so it's syllabus week. Do I really need those? No, I'm kidding. So, no, seriously though, these are the things that we have to think about when we start looking at the market attractiveness, and where you're going to position yourself and relative to competition simultaneously. Again, a joint space map really helps demonstrate that fairly well. It gives you some tools to think about anyways. So if nothing else, this is a fun tool to look around with. Y'all play with it if you want and just see if it's interesting. You can obviously save it and use this down the road. The same document here, there's a calculation for a three, if you wanted to do a three competitor space map, there's a thing there for that as well. So it looks a little bit different, but you can do a three space map as well instead of a four competitor map. Okay, any questions? Yeah? So this class is a little different tonight. We're doing some different things. Makes sense? We're having some fun with that. All right, the third thing that I wanted to show you that's related to this is going to drop us back into this stuff we looked at with cluster analysis. I don't use this method I don't ever use this method. So it's something I'm not as functionally efficient in. But there's something out there. Scaling. Multi-dimensional scaling. Some people just refer to it as MBA. I can't remember if the textbook talks about this. So in one edition of the textbook, they have a chapter that talks about this stuff. I'm not sure if the newest edition does, though. So we'll spend a little bit of time talking about MDS, or multi-dimensional scaling. So in what we just saw, you are very limited in how you evaluate market segments. It's extremely limiting because you are only allowed to have 2 or maybe 3 dimensions displayed at a time. Does that make sense? So you've got 2-dimensional space with attribute 1 and attribute 2. Okay, again, these are like things like price or product features or quality or whatever, right? If you do a 3-dimensional map, I know it's hard to tell, but you'll have like a 3rd dimension, like out there, X, Y, Z, and this would be attribute 3, and you drew a 3-dimensional map. I know that doesn't look right, but I can't draw, so you get my point, right? Does that make sense? So at best, you've got 2 to 3 variables that you can demonstrate or display at once. So multidimensional scaling and something called correspondence analysis, the 2 methods, what they allow you to do is have many variables that are used simultaneously to create a space. And so instead of a thing like this, where we have that, you have an origin, and what you end up doing is you have these kind of distances or kind of markets or whatnot that sort of emanate from an origin or a beginning point, and they have their things. And what'll happen is you'll get the same type of like clustering effect that you did before. It's the same type of thing. Okay, and within each one of these, you've got individual respondents that have a certain distance from the center, and then these centers are distanced from each other like that. Okay, so this is visually it's a little challenging to see. There's a map and a thing that we'll do. There's not an axis X or Y, but it's a spatial distancing approach. And the key though is you're able to use lots of different variables simultaneously to create basically like a profile like we did, only now we're looking at profiles of consumers and brands put together, and thinking of them as how distant they are from each other, or how much or how close they are in proximity, or something along those lines. Okay, so multidimensional scaling. I have an example. It's not a great example, but I do have an example that I could share. Again, in SPFS, I fully, the caveat that this is not something that I do ever or a lot. And when the catch with it or the problem with it, or the issue with it, is that I don't have a lot of data sets that would support this. So we'll look at one though, and kind of go from there.
There, I'm just gonna give you a bunch and maybe hand those around.
Extra. All right, so this is a data set. Give you some background on it. It was created at Georgia State a while ago for a couple different textbook illustrations. And it's been worked over a number of times. This is a company, this is basically what happened is there's a survey of people who go out to eat. And there are 2 restaurants that were evaluated in this. I think one was maybe Jose's and one was Charlie's. I can't remember exactly if those are the names or not, but 2 different types of restaurants. And there was basically some data. First 11 variables relate to different customers' interests and their personality elements. Are there any extras? Yes. I'll look here. So if you look at the X1 through X11, these are sort of personality trait type things. I try new and different things. I'm a party person. People come to me. Blah 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 blah. Okay, so you can kind of see that those things go together. And then 12 through 21 are perceptions of these attributes that the restaurants have. Like how well do these restaurants perform on these different things, like friendly employees and fun place to eat and has large portion sizes and some things like that. Okay, then we have some outcome variables, satisfaction with the 2, likelihood to return, likelihood to recommend, how often do you eat there, and then we had some importance things, price, food, quality, atmosphere, service, and things like that. Okay, so we could do a lot with this. We could do some cluster analysis like we did before. And you know, the thing that I'll just kind of show a real quick illustration of, I guess, is just this multi-dimensional scaling stuff. Yeah, the multi-dimensional scaling stuff. Now there will be, I've got to add a brief caveat here. There was a step here. I added a few variables to this database or this data set. I grouped customers by certain, or I measured customers by certain traits. Some of the customers, so if you take those 11 variables at the beginning, you'll notice some of them kind of sound the same. Like, so I try new and different things. I like to buy new products. Those two things sound similar, right? Those are two items that you can use to measure innovativeness. If somebody's innovative, they'll score high on those two things. I'm a party person. What else is like that? Party person. I like to go out socially. Those two things group. There might be another one or two that group together. People come to me. Friends come to me. Those things sort of go together. And then there's a healthy eating one. I avoid fried foods. I eat balanced, nutritious foods, and I'm careful about what I eat. Okay, so the point here is that if you take those 11, you can consolidate some of them, and they form into 4 different groups or 4 different types of questions. And so to clean this up a little bit, there are 4 different groups here. Scores for these folks: innovators, eating healthy people, socialite, or people who are very social, and good timers. That's what I call them. So the party people are the good timers. The ones who have people come to them are socialites. People who eat healthy are people who eat healthy, and then we have innovators. So imagine that these are 4 different segments of customers, right? That maybe, if we want to attract somebody who likes to have a good time, then our restaurant atmosphere has to be really good, right? If we want to attract people who eat healthy, we probably have to drop the fried food, right? Or whatever, we have to have healthier options. Make sense? So in other words, we want to position ourselves towards these types of people that we're going to have to, offer products and services that will motivate them. So multidimensional scaling, and again, I hate that I don't have great examples of this, but the analysis that we do here, it'll kind of work. It's a different type of application or process that we do. So I'm just going to go through a few of these things. What we'll do is we'll find the variables that we're looking for. And again, these are these new variables that they're not listed on your sheet, but 4 composite variables. And they all relate to those first 11 items on the scale. We'll do something like that. We'll do something like that, and we'll just do okay. Okay, we'll just do okay, and we'll get a little bit of data returned. There's some model information, but then we get this picture, right? And this picture is really what I want us to be able to see. I'm going to actually move this picture over and do something, kind of blow it up a little bit so that we can see it better. Do a few things here. We'll do this. So this is the picture. And again, I hate that things are so small. Oh, these axes are already here. So we have an origin in the middle, like I mentioned. And then what we would do is we would typically draw a line emanating from the origin. And let's make it a little bit bolder here so we can see it better. For each of these groups. So the good timers and the socialites are down below here. So they're fairly, I don't want to say they're close to each other, but they're not that far apart from each other. Innovators are way over here by themselves. Eating healthy. You'll notice that the eating healthy folks are almost exactly, not almost, but they're very, kind of diametrically opposite the socialites. I don't know if that's significant or not, but it certainly could be. Now remember, we used 4 different variables. There were multiple variables that were used to help describe this. And where it says dimension 1 and dimension 2, they really don't have meaning here. There's not a significant meaning. There's not a thing we would call or label dimension 1 or dimension 2 because it just doesn't apply in this setting. We could use many variables to kind of form these profiles if we wanted to. And then we could map it this way. The second thing that we would want to do is we would want a perceptual score for, and in this case again, there's only 2 restaurants, but we would want a perceptual score on how each restaurant performed on various things, so we could map it and see where they were. Again, the data set's not exactly set up to do that, so I hate that this is not a great example. But I guess the takeaway is kind of that if your data's set up right, creating a multidimensional scaling map, which would incorporate lots of variables, isn't really super hard. It's something that can be done, but it would actually give you a lot more information than just a 2-dimensional space. Remember, if you have a 2-dimensional map and you have 4 or 5 or 6 variables, you have to create a different map every time you want to compare the different variables, and it gets really hard to do. It's really cumbersome. And it's ugly, right? This is a much cleaner, prettier, more informative methodology to be able to do perceptual mapping. And like I said, it's doable. It's achievable if it's something that you want to jump into or whatnot. Okay, so hopefully this is just a couple examples, some data, or some way to look at a few things. We could do some, I don't know if there's any good clustering we could do here. I wonder if there's any fun clustering we could do among these folks. I don't know what it would look like. We could cluster people based on these personalities, and we could make groups out of them. Already made some groups. That would be interesting. It wouldn't be a hard thing to do at all. Otherwise, 2-step clusters. We've just dropped some of these variables. Take all 11. Let's do all 11 there. We could set this, just leave that the way it is, and we could, it's probably going to give like 2. It gives 3 clusters. Yeah, 3 clusters with those 11 different variables, all pretty well arranged, so that's a good thing. And then if we did, it's as simple as that. We found 3 market segments. And then you just go through these variables and you kind of describe and create a profile for each of those three market segments. So this number 2 here, whichever one's number 2 over there, they scored very high on try new things, very high on try new different things. So these are our innovators probably. I don't know what these other guys are, but you can analyze those and do that. Okay, so any questions? I don't know if this was interesting to you or not, or if it, I don't know, maybe not. But it's it's like one of these things where in marketing, virtually every decision we make is data driven somehow, and it has some analysis attached to it. And I know there are a lot of other fields of business that use a lot of math, but the stuff that's done here is pretty cool. It's pretty interesting, and I think it helps us drive the decisions that we make, the strategies and the ideas that we have. All right, so let's take a short break. And there are snacks, cookies, brownies, please. They need to be gone, consumed. All right, so let's take, I don't know, I mean, I know we're just kind of getting into it, but it is 7:20, is that right? Something like that? So maybe by 7:30ish or so, give about 10 minutes, chill a little bit, get a drink of water, eat some snacks, and then we'll start a little bit more, go off a little bit more, okay? Yeah, man, Marshall.
Oh. Okay, man.
I mean, it was there, obviously.
Yeah.
And it was like, 0-0, that was the most exciting game. What's gonna happen? I was like waiting, I was like, I mean, sooner or later, something's gonna get. It never did. It was like, and we had a couple shots, I mean, we had a couple of them, we had like 3 opportunities.
I was staring at him the whole time.
No, I know, it was like,
Yeah.
it was awesome.
Yeah.
Well, it was. Yeah. All right, what's up?
So I was looking at the reflection prompt this week.
What did I get? Yeah.
Just wondering, a couple questions. So the material you utilize in
Yeah.
is it rather now in the second edition? Was it already present?
It should be, was it in there? I mean, yeah, it should be. Okay, so Campbell.
No, these are from-
I don't have a chance to read those yet.
No.
So I go brownie or do I go cookie?
I don't know if you.
Oh, well, listen.
Why not?
I'll make a mess out of my brownies.
That's what I'm wearing. That's how I'm like, do I do
Yeah, I'm gonna use my.
And what they do is they buy the cans, and it's concentrated, so you put it in the pan, and you add water to it.
Go ahead, keep it on there.
So.
I am.
There we go.
Thank you.
Well, we're bringing their product to Russia and China. And totally different markets for students.
Oh,
Right?
our man brought me.
And
Yeah.
Ready, read these?
No, actually, it was in the morning, we had an event in the
market attractiveness.
graduate program's office, so yeah.
Market is.
You made them?
What would make it?
No, I wish I did. Yeah, I would have.
Say you did.
Yeah, right?
At this point, we believe you.
Yeah.
So you can imagine an untapped market for this type of product. However, they completely misread their market. They don't understand what customs.
Wait, you're on diet.
Food is a traditional thing, right? And in these
what?
markets,
You're on diet.
you don't.
Don't
They make a
Oh,
present.
of course.
You're training.
Of course.
Bro,
You never
shut
tried to
up. Today.
do you imagine mom, grandma, parents, if they opened a can and served canned soup? That'd just be embarrassing, wouldn't it, right? In that culture, here in the US, it's been around.
Where are you going?
And all of this total sense.
For what?
Okay.
So.
You
so
did
think
not
about
stay
it,
put.
kind of think
Where I
about
call
perspective.
Got
What
it.
concert?
It's more like the
A house
conceptual
concert, you probably
understanding
don't
and
know.
using actual
Probably not.
tools.
Probably, yeah, probably.
You're flying all the way to Chicago for that?
Yeah. But I mean,
You're flying to New
so
York
the
and
things
then
that we talked
Chicago.
about this
Okay.
week, or the notes
You're
and
flying
the
to New York
text,
and then
really
Chicago.
focuses
I'm
on
just gonna be here for 2
evaluating
hours.
the attractiveness of a market.
The plane, boop.
And so you can talk a little bit about why.
Did you figure out where you're flying?
That one. Size, growth rates, you know, lack of competition. There are lots of reasons why these markets are attractive. But that doesn't necessarily mean you're gonna have success in them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%, yeah.
Is it attractive?
It was actually kind of an interesting, there you go.
I mean, the outside. You can use that. As long as they're not, as long as they're not practicing.
Thank you.
Did you eat that whole plate?
No,
Wow, I'm impressed.
No, I did not. I was making,
Yeah.
I was making a mess over a
Well, I don't know, I wrote like sentences, like what are you supposed to write, but then these are the two that I don't remember.
The traffic to get here was
like,
actually
I don't know.
It took me 30 minutes to get here.
Because we were gonna meet tonight.
It was
It's
crazy.
like a
I was stuck at the
test.
same light for 3 lights.
Take home.
Oh, he thought it was like a sit down, like
Yeah,
time.
that's why he was like, let's meet up and like whatever, but like it's literally like definitions.
Let me read that question again.
You're so good.
So tomorrow when I go to practice, I'm gonna knock your door.
I know.
Oh, you
Like
fine?
5 in the morning.
It's not the same.
And we go
It's
much
the numbers.
No.
I'll call you.
Not at 5.
Send me.
No? That's early.
I don't like the way that's phrased, explain how it can be so much higher than.
Right,
Well, I mean, I guess
Yeah.
I don't know.
the IRR.
Nowadays, 100% of the footprint.
So do I need to do math?
We live in a digital world.
I'm planning for that now.
Yeah, and
What about the second one? Did you read that one?
I mean, we have Google, we have Facebook and Instagram, all those perf that is already doing, like, they do all the work. They put they gather the information, they have the information.
You just have to
And you just, it's cheap,
That's all you have to do.
yeah, but I mean, for more detail, I know that Google does a lot of, but the thing is, I think the challenge nowadays is how we will deliver, because those clusters, they are organic organisms, they move, they switch, they're not
He said haven't been
static.
home
Someone
yet.
will be
Let you
there
know
for
when I get
years
to it.
and then switch, and someone
The
can
value
be there
that's
for a year and then move out from another
Right,
cluster.
because we're literally
Right?
2/3 of the way down the
thing is, how you
semester,
gonna
but let's
deliver-
take the midterm.
That's why the algorithms and the cluster
It's
analysis is
literally
done.
All definitions.
Nanosecond
Terminology, discount rate, define and explain the relative difference between higher and lower discount rate.
It will pay more to
It's
deliver
basically all.
for me, for you, that
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, because it was.
So-
Am I correct?
Just really
Well, you are, and
against
so
the
the
agenda.
But I don't know how much
challenge
once
is
we
to
try.
create a system.
So I'm like writing it and then just a little bit letting this ride.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to overflow it.
Fast
Right.
enough to reflect. So you have to be able to have data show you that a person has changed, or a person and then be able to.
It was good, by the way.
Yeah.
Like, they did a good job.
Now, in reality though,
That's all I did at work.
I sell, as I have a small one, I don't, like, say I'm or I'm, let's say I'm a medium, I don't have much money to
I don't know, you told me.
spread my content and to have those feedbacks in order to adjust.
Yeah.
What do you suggest? We have software, we have,
well, and.
or I'm gonna rely on Google forever.
It's like
Maybe
a
you do,
stick.
maybe you have some software,
You
but
stick it
here's
in
another
like
way.
a drink with sugar
So-
and it turns a different color.
Yeah, I heard you saying that.
You have to adapt it as possible. But if you pull yourself back a little bit and try to achieve.
The wrong thing. I was nervous because Sonic should be like, alright. So I thought,
Oh,
wow.
sorry, I can't do that.
But your customer may not be quite as good. So we're gonna talk about this.
You gotta narrow it to where, that's why you need to know
But
the clusters.
if you can pull back a little bit, and if you can be operating more generic
Like, well, he didn't even know. Wait, I was like, well, he didn't even know, so I can't even get paid.
How did he not know those?
He definitely, bro, I come on, bro. Like,
But
you know, all the
be able
people.
to personalize it to the market, but that's just kind of that trade-off. So this don't have 100% right.
Yeah.
The more focused you get, the more costly it is. And the more nimble you have to be.
Never we met in person.
It's hard.
No, it's all about, and I don't know that we're gonna get to.
He's like, oh, go to that's crazy.
Ask my approach to a woman.
Yeah.
Look at you.
And I was looking at you.
Yeah, but still, it's the fact.
You want it for everything, you want to type of line.
Around people. You got an address number?
When do you leave?
This man have like Jerry.
Either Derek or Mark.
One of them is like a massive bag.
Now, I remember water expensive. 5 to 10.
Yeah, this guy was driving, I just stood up and I was like. It was the funniest thing I've ever heard.
Oh yeah, it's possible. We got to put on Excel and it wasn't built as a big.
So think of
Please go.
Some friends.
You don't know
From here?
No. The ones that I go to. There's some friends that I go
When do you go kayak? You're never even here on the weekends. How do you have time to go kayak?
Saturdays I'm here, Fridays. That's
Now you're talking about 5 classes, but about tomorrow. My hand.
so yeah, I'm going back on Monday. We'll see.
Why would you die?
You never know.
So you're right, but it's
It's about me, man.
In about 10 minutes.
They will see probably the best athletes.
That's where, don't worry,
I saw that. Yeah.
Definitely, this is like almost
I didn't buy it.
like 280, 72.
I was like 500 calories.
Pode que o Brasil joga.
You guys saying I feel left out?
Yeah, sorry.
Just kidding.
He is saying that Brazil play soccer against Germany. He is Brazil. He's not German.
Yeah.
But only that is on Irish side. Tell me one of Germany is good. He's good. He's good.
I was ready to teach this. I mean, it wasn't as easy as how you do it. Now we're graduating research, so I can do it like
Just for future. Yeah.
well, you finish that, it's just got,
You know what?
so I work.
Are you talking about? Yeah, I have a. Makes no sense. You don't even want to know. Yeah. What do you have to do?
Yeah.
You'll get a whole new appreciation.
Yeah. Conversate too much, pull the trigger. My head pitch up.
Stop it, because of the way he words things, you can't figure it out. Yeah.
It's unfortunate whenever you have like, they're gonna have to replace all of us as grad assistants.
That's what I said today. They're gonna have to replace all of us because we're all gonna fail out of the program. Now you guys are down.
Cool, but I didn't think you had
A lawyer,
They're gonna do.
Yeah, no. No, that's a good show. Yeah, it's a good show. Oh, we can set It's like these 4 teenagers that like solve, find treasures, they're like treasure hunters, but they're like supposed to be 16, and it's just like, what?
Together. answer.
It was like,
Oh, I did though. I responded and I said, I would love to meet with you.
about
They can always send you
at
like
Fort
balance on it.
Worth.
Sort of look like.
Oh, you told us that?
Jack Reacher told me you
Yeah, she was
Space shoes on.
her husband.
I said, thank you so much for being
I know exactly what you're talking about. I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
Oh, we tried going to his office and he didn't.
Her husband got killed. And her sister
How much did you ride for?
I stopped over the last
I haven't seen that.
This one.
Yeah.
Fool me once.
Fool me.
Hey, man, I know myself. And no game, no game.
It was a little slow, but you did.
Oh, no, this
Whoever,
What do we think? Which is
Might be out of the first.
I feel like you got it. It's only 5. It's only 5.
honestly.
And you know what? You're like, you're gonna be fine. I want you to go home and, you know, have a very traumatic experience.
I think I've been like delusional about it because like I can't believe that this is real. They use this all as a face of wall and they're gonna fail us out of it.
It was just a little too real. Yeah.
you killed me.
I have not seen her talk all day. I sent you the voice recording.
All right, let's get back started again. It's good to see you all again. You're back.
And then she says, I don't know what to say.
This is always one of those tests to see who's missing after the break.
What do you mean? Everybody's here.
No, I'm kidding. It's all right. Hopefully you're all back. We're going to get things started again here. So let's spend a little bit of time just getting into some of the text material that we have. This week it's all about selecting and choosing or using criteria to choose market segments that are attractive. Like how would you say, look, I just did the segmenting thing, and there were, remember for the flight training school, there were 3 market segments or 3 clusters of characters. And which one, if I had to choose one, which would be the most appropriate, which would be your favorite one to go to? And further, maybe you don't have to choose just one. Maybe you could choose 2 or 3, or maybe you choose all of them. I mean, I'm not saying that's not viable. It's possible, for sure. So that's what this kind of chapter is all about. It's like, all right, if we have to choose one, which ones are the most appropriate? If we have to, or if we're going to do a different strategy, what would that strategy be, and why? So let's just we'll spend a few minutes with some of the ideas here, and then we'll break out and we'll do an activity for the last bit of class. So generally speaking, it's kind of like a theme that keeps reoccurring over and over and over again, and you can use it here just like we've done otherwise. You know, an attractive market segment is one that we can satisfy, one that we can reach, one that we can appropriately provide for their needs and wants. So we have to have the competencies and the resources to be able to deliver on the features they want. That's like one of these key things. And we just saw that with perceptual mapping. Like, if on the perceptual map, if the segment really needs to be, like needs a specific feature, and we can deliver on that feature, we will be able to satisfy that market segment better than our competitors, right? However, if there's a feature that the market segment really wants and we don't do that particularly well, then we're probably not gonna be able to reach that market segment and effectively sell our product to them, or not as effectively as our competitors can, right? So that's kind of one of these things. It's a bit logical. It kind of makes sense that you have to be good at what your customer wants, and the better you are at it, the closer you'll be to them perceptually, but then also, functionally, you'll be able to sell more products to them. And then, so that's kind of the way the market views us. But also, at the same time, these market segments have to make business sense. They have to be large enough size-wise so that we can have sales volume that we need, but they also have to be profitable enough so that we have the profit margins that we need to be able to make money, cover our fixed costs, and so on and so forth. So there's kind of that kind of mix there of things that are going on. The textbook provides a 2x2 matrix, which we'll look at in just a second. It looks a lot like this one. This is just another kind of example from another source where you have these two dimensions. One is corporate capability or competitive capability to deliver the value proposition to the customer and how well you do it. Are you strong or weak in your ability to bring to the market what they want for a product? And then attractiveness of the market. Are they profitable? Are they large? Are they willing to buy your product? Are they good customers? There are attractive market segments, and then there are others that are less attractive. And again, if you use this sort of 2x2 kind of dimensional thing, you get 4 spaces. I don't know why in marketing we do models that always have these. I don't really know why, but it looks like things we've seen before, right? And there are these 4 different areas, again, kind of the go for it type thing, where we have skills and abilities, and hey, it happens to be a market segment that is growing rapidly. It's very exciting. I have volleyball apparel or a sports apparel producer, and they look at the sport, maybe youth volleyball, that's growing really, really fast. We're a sports apparel company. We have the skill set, we have the knowledge, we have the capabilities to provide products in this space, and it simultaneously is a market segment that's growing rapidly. Of course we're going to be aggressive. Of course we're going to move into that. We're going to flood it with products, and we're going to try to make as many sales as we can. Okay, the 2 diagonals, though, are a little bit more question mark areas, right? Do we want to go into spaces where, there's a market that's an attractive market, but we don't quite have the skills to participate in it? This is, again, maybe an old example, but a CD is a compact disc. The round disc things they used to make in the old days. A CD producer, boy, I gotta update some of these, don't I? A CD producer, sees that the video gaming space is really attractive, it's really profitable, and it really is, growing rapidly. But maybe in this particular case, look, they do some of the technology here, but they don't write software. They don't have necessarily the skills to create software that could be delivered to the gaming industry or gaming market segments. So, but that market segment and that space, that product category is very enticing. It's very intriguing. So one of the things that they're going to have to do is retool themselves, gather more resources. They're going to have to probably team up with another company, maybe to get some of those software skills that they lack. They have some of the hardware skills maybe, but not some of the software skills. Okay, so again, a little bit, maybe not the most up-to-date thing. Further, even more less up-to-date are typewriters and mechanical typewriters. Boy, if you're a typewriter producer today, probably in trouble, right? Something like that. But maybe you produce them really well. Maybe you're really the best out there. Maybe you're the Corona of typewriters, and you're just the best company, best equipped. You've been around forever, keyboards, all that jazz. But the market's just not there anymore. And again, what do you kind of do? You probably have to redefine what you are as a company, retool yourself, maybe take your skills that are transferable into another product category or something like that. And then finally we have this avoid where you don't have a lot of skills in this particular to serve this market segment, and the market segment isn't doing well either. Okay, and clearly this is, we're not going to get involved in something like this. But some of these tangential, kind of categories here, this I don't have the capabilities, but the market is attractive. That could be something we would later call maybe either a peripheral, or in either of those diagonals, maybe a peripheral opportunity, or really an adjacent market segment. So you have your core business, and then you have a side business that's sort of related, and maybe we're not the best at it, but it goes well with what we're doing. And you could bring that alongside, and it could be a cash flow for you, and you could get into it. But the point here is that we have these skill matching opportunities where we're doing things that the market segment needs and wants. We learned that from the perceptual mapping stuff that we did. We learned that by really, really understanding our market segment profiling. We know what they want. We know what will motivate them. We know what they'll spend their money on, and making sure that our skill sets deliver on those things is going to make a win-win. The other part of that is it's got to be large enough. It's got to be profitable enough. They have to be customers that we can make money with. So that attractiveness bit down below is vital as well. I mentioned the same concept is in the textbook, and they use the same sort of figuring here, where we have on one dimension, with the competitive positioning, again, they have strong and weak, and then we have market attractiveness, again, going left to right, and in this case it has high to low. In this case, though, they've defined these 4 different quadrants as types of businesses. The type of business that emanates from each of these 4 spaces, right? And so, again, if you're in that enviable position in the upper left-hand corner where you have the ability to deliver what the market wants, simultaneously the market is growing and it's very rapid, then we're going to call that a core business. It's the business that is fundamentally the purpose of the company. The company exists to do this thing. Right? You could strip all the other cash flows away, but at the end of the day, what's left is what they do well and where they make their money and what they're known for. The company's going to spend a majority of their resources and skills satisfying this market segment because it's what they do. It's their base of business, right? So their resource base is established well enough where they can maintain share, sales, market share and such for a long period of time. All right, this is kind of what they're known for. If the firm diversified a lot and they had to scale back and they had to sell off some of their holdings, they wouldn't sell this off. They would sell the other stuff off first, and they would refocus themselves into this space, into this core function that they do. I argue that Disney's a pretty big company. If you think about Disney as a corporation, as a company, you think about all the different things they have in their portfolio. They own media companies, they own production companies, they own amusement parks, obviously. I would argue that if you look at Disney and you say, well, what is Disney's core? What are they at their core? And I'd argue that at the end of the day, they're a company that's focused on the character and figure media rights. The ownership of characters, I think, is what they are. Because, look, you've got obviously all the Disney characters. Well, all the theme parks and all the movies and all the figurines, they all focused on the fact that Disney owns the rights to those characters, right? I mean, when they bought Marvel, they were buying the character rights to Marvel more than anything else. Because then, once you own the character rights, you do whatever you want. You can make millions of products, movies, shows, everything, right? They can all be. But at the end of the day, if they don't have the rights to those characters, then what is that? What else? What do they have? right? You know what I'm saying? So think about like the core of the business, what makes the business, and they're, you know, it usually leverages whatever they're good at. You know, that's probably it, right? That's what it is. And they're gonna ride that, and let's face it, character development nowadays in media, in storytelling, in a lot of what we do socially is enormously important. Just look at how popular the Marvel movies have been, based on solid character development and obviously good production and, you know, movie production and things like that. But that's kind of, they're in very attractive kind of space in terms of what they do, and they do it really, really well. Okay, if I were to go back here, we're gonna move over to one of these diagonals where we have strong competitive positionings, but maybe the market isn't as attractive as we would like it to be. Okay, but we can be a player in it. The authors of our text call this a peripheral business. So this is something on the side, not on the side, but it is. It's kind of one of these things where it's a business stream. It's an area where we have product lines. We can be a player in that market segment, right? Because we're good at it. We're good at doing it. But maybe that's not a particularly attractive thing. Again, if you were going to go think about Disney, I have another example here, but I'm trying to think. Disney, like, I don't know how well their theme parks do from a growth perspective. I don't know. I mean, obviously their theme parks do well, but year over year, I don't know what their growth is like in that area. But suppose you look at their growth in the media space, like when they have ESPN and ABC and all of that. Like growth in those areas, that might be where some of the core stuff is. But some of these product categories they're in that aren't really fast moving, you know, those would be peripheral products, peripheral product categories or peripheral market segments that they're participating in. Non-fast moving, slow growth areas, but they do them well. They do them real well because they have core competencies there. Those would be things that would be peripheral lines of business for them. Firms are equipped to satisfy the market, but the market doesn't necessarily deliver the volume of sales or the growth that they would typically want to have if it were their core, right? So they're good at what they do, but they could not rely on peripheral lines of business as their sole breadwinner, right? They have to be added on. They have to go in concert with whatever they're doing for their core, generally speaking. Example I have, and we'll have an exercise here, talk a little bit about this. What if you're like a skincare company like Neutrogena or Olay, and you know, you've got this whole line of skincare products, lotions and cleansers and such, and the sun care area, sunscreen and suntan lotions. It's not a particularly big, I mean, it's big, but look, think about it. People who are using daily facial cleansers, the volume that they use on an annual basis is huge. Compare the same person who uses sunscreen, and it's very seasonal, it's very sporadic, the volumes are far lower, right? It's a much less attractive area, right? Much less attractive product category. But for the company that already produces sun care or skincare products, it makes total sense for them to do it. In other words, they have the core competencies and the ability to do this. They have the competitive ability to make sunscreens, but they couldn't just live on sunscreens alone. Does that make sense? Like, they wouldn't survive that because it's not that attractive of a market segment by itself to that company, to that specific company. Okay, so that's like a peripheral type of a business. Okay, again, kind of looking back here, we've got these illusionary businesses. These are ones where they're very attractive market segments, but we don't compete particularly. We don't necessarily have the skills and the resources to get into it. It may be considering, you know, that computer company has a lot of computer hardware technology skills, but doesn't have the software resources to create new innovative games for gamers. Or something to that effect, where the gaming market may be booming, there may be super attractive elements there, but largely speaking, the company doesn't really have the skills to deliver on the attributes that the gamers want. Again, in the perceptual map, we're not going to be close to them. It's going to be like a big segment that looks great, but on the map, we're going to be pretty distanced away from them in elements of like product delivery and things of that nature. Okay, then this very last category, this again is that avoid space. Look, there's a market segment out there that isn't really growing, and we're not really good at it. Or we can't connect with them, or we don't have the ability to deliver on the features that segment would want, and the market's either too, and when we say it's just not attractive, like maybe it's too small, or maybe the market segment, the folks in it are very picky and hard to reach, or maybe they're very price sensitive, so they're not very loyal. Well, if the customers aren't very loyal, that might make them unattractive. So this attractiveness thing, it's just that they're not attractive to us, and it's just not something that we want to get ourselves too deep in the hole with. Okay, so cool so far? Good. So just kind of think about this duality that's going on. As we look then to say, well, what makes an attractive market, or some markets more attractive than others? Again, the text outlines a whole bunch of different kind of components here. I'm going to focus on competitive elements and then some of these market factors. So you could create an actual scoring model. Say we had those 3 market segments for our flight academy. We could use the criteria that we'll talk about here, and we could score each of the market segments and give them a numeric value on which ones are more attractive and which ones are less attractive. Okay, so some of the things that we look at when we're scoring a market segment. Again, I'm going to focus mainly on some competitive pressures and some market criteria and a couple others. But these are the big ones. All right, so one of the things we look at in a market segment and deem it, whether it's attractive or not, is how intense the competition is. How much competition and how intense it is. This is one of these things when you jump into a market segment, you need to know who your direct competitors will be. Again, perceptual map indicates the ones that are closest to you on the perceptual map are your most direct competitors. And how many are there? And how well do you compete against them? It's kind of a thing to think about. Threats of substitution. So in other words, that we had this with Porter's model, like when, is this a situation where a new threat could come in rapidly and erode our market share? Is that something that I need to worry about in this market segment? Like, could somebody else come in to this market segment quickly and do us damage, impair what we're trying to achieve here? Degree of differentiation. All right. So another one, kind of on that perceptual map. There's other competitors right there. They deliver something to the customer. We're always seeming to be in direct competition for this market, but we distinguish ourselves from them on some key component. We are able to create some uniqueness in our product that they can't copy. Remember that concept of an isolating mechanism? Maybe we have a skill or a resource that we are leveraging in the market that creates a point of differentiation. Like, I'm totally different. My product has elements that they can't copy. That protects us a little bit, right? That creates uniqueness. That's a good thing. Now, if the competitors in that market segment or sort of that segment, if they can duplicate what I do, then any advantage I thought I had erodes very rapidly, right? It just doesn't exist any longer. So that's kind of the thing to think about there. And then another key thing we always look at is our ability to gain market share and how that market share is distributed among the competitors who are already in there. Okay, so again, how competitive or how attractive is this segment? Well, is there a lot of competition? Are there elements that allow me to distinguish myself from those competitors, right? How much market share will I have compared to those competitors in that market segment? Again, we saw that in the perceptual map example. We looked at relative market share within a market segment. How does that change? How can I manage that? What can happen there? Okay, so those are a few things that we look at for competitors. Again, you can kind of score your segments based on that. When we look at the market itself, I've mentioned this numerous times, but the size, the sheer number of consumers that make up that market segment is important. It's vital to know that. So if you are a cost-driven company, which most are, but if you're a cost-driven company and you have a lot of volume or you require a lot of volume to be able to break even and diffuse your fixed costs, then like this whole idea of how many units I can sell is going to be contingent on how large the market is, the market segment is. If the market segment's large, then you'll be good. If it's smaller, then it's going to be more of a challenge because you have to have bigger market share to be able to deal with that. Okay, so how large is the market relative to your needs and from a cost basis in your company? Number two, how rapidly or to what extent is it growing, right? Is the market segment moving, growing? At what rate is it growing? We always talk about this compound annual growth rate, if you want to be complicated, but like year over year, how much growth in sales are you making? How much revenue and growth in revenue are you making? Folks, there are lots of things that go into that, but a lot of times is the market growing? That's why last week we talked about this idea of dupes and this idea that the pie is divided up by these people, these companies, the pie, but so everybody wants a piece of the pie, which is the market. And these dupes are coming in and taking some share away, but maybe they're not. Maybe what they're doing is they're growing the size of the pie. And everybody's winning. Everybody's doing better because the pie is getting bigger, right? And that's awesome. That's what you want. I mean, you can grow by taking share away from your competitors or growing the market. There's two ways you can grow. And so that's why that growth thing can be really, really important. Okay, price sensitivity. Price sensitivity leads to this idea, and I don't want to exclusively say price necessarily. That's what we say a lot. So like when we do something in marketing, we change the price, we change the packaging, we change the quantity, we change something in the product. Those all impact sales, the sales level. Like we might call it demand, but it's really sales. So we use price sensitivity a lot. So how sensitive is the market to changes in our marketing activities, price being one of them? If I make a rapid price change, will the market respond by buying the product a lot more or a lot less? Or if I make a price change, will the market demand more or less stay the same? Gasoline prices fluctuate a tremendous amount by percentage. Percent change in gas prices change a lot if you look at the percent change. But demand doesn't change, hardly at all. It just doesn't. We all buy the same amount of gas every week, regardless of if it's $2.79 or $3.25. There's a huge percentage change, but our demand for the product stays the same. It doesn't change. You still have to go to work. You still have to go to that 6 o'clock Thursday class and fight traffic, whether you like it or not, Just because the gas price is high, Grace, you can't.
They're so high, and my car guzzles gas.
Oh, gas prices are not high right now.
No, right now they're not. It's fine.
But you know what I'm saying.
Yes.
Yeah.
Traffic all the time.
Now compare that to your weekly ice cream binge. Thursday night after class, you're looking for the ice cream, and Yeah, you're gonna switch from brand to brand to brand, maybe to whatever's on sale, right? Like, we're very, very, very impacted by price. Yeah, maybe, I don't know if you're an ice cream eater, but cookies or whatever snack you wanna have. So what about different markets though? So different market segments are more sensitive than others to price. And if you're in a market, you're trying to reach a group of consumers that are very sensitive to changes in marketing tactics, then you have to keep that in mind. They're harder to deal with. They're harder to work with. So, okay. Also, loyalty, commitment, characteristics of a market segment might make one more attractive than another. Again, if they're loyal, brand loyal, and such, that might matter. A few other, just a couple other things. Sometimes we have this idea of strategic fit. We haven't really talked about brand personalities or brand equity and things like that much in this class. I think we will towards the end, but sometimes a brand has a personality, like personal traits it carries, and customers like to match their personal traits and characteristics with that of brands. So there's this natural fit, plus just your ability to deliver what the customer wants. That's kind of thrown in there as well. Two other elements which we haven't really mentioned. One would be the maturity of the market itself. All right, this is a big idea, and it gets overlooked a lot. But when we talk about consumer markets start at some point, and they are developed and they grow. So if there's a new product out there and customers have never really seen it or used it before, a market has to be made. It has to be created. It has to be developed and it has to be nurtured. It's a little bit like a product life cycle. Like at the very beginning, the market hasn't established itself. It hasn't been defined yet, and it has to be created. Somebody has to create a market in the early stages of a product life cycle. After a number of time periods, the market is better developed and it functions on its own, and you don't have to work on it as hard in creating the market. So you can be a follower and you can participate in that market, and it's easier. But in the early stages of creating a market, it's really, really challenging. It's really hard to participate. And so that's one thing to think about. And then also we have scale issues. If the market segment you're looking at is very local, regional, national, or international, you have different challenges at each of those levels, which might lend itself to the attractiveness of the market segment. Finally, it's not specifically a competitive thing, but 100% profitability and the profit margins that you are able to realize will vary by market segment. Okay, so some market segments, we talked a little bit about it before. The risk-averse market segment for the flight training, they were also really influenced by cost. So that market segment, we're probably going to have to give them some incentives, maybe some discounts. We might have to do some things to incent them to try the product, try the flight training, which eats into our profit margin. Right? Anytime you do something okay, look, this is maybe sound wrong. Anything nice you do for a customer, it's going to cost you money. Anything. And it's going to cost you profit margin. Right? And sometimes you have to do nice things for customers to get them to be your customers. And it's going to erode your profit margin. Now, the problem is you can't be nice to everybody, and you can't be too nice to everybody, or you ain't going to make any money. Right? So here's the trick. Some market segments you have to do that with to attract them, right? And that was market segment 2 on our flight training group. Right? The other market segment, though, the ones who love risk, cost was much less of an issue for them. So no, in fact, with that group, I'm going to upsell them to buy other packages to get them to buy more from me. That, you know, right? So I'm gonna get my more profit margin out of them as much as I can because that's the type of customer they are. So this whole profitability thing, you know, is kind of important to know. And how you're gonna attract, and it lends itself, you know, obviously the more, the market segments where I spend less money and they spend more with me will boost my profit margin, will be more, there'll be better customers. Okay, so you could do an evaluative thing, you could do like a checklist, you could do metrics for those different elements, and you could actually do a scorecard where you score your different market segments and create a global score on which ones are the most attractive based on those 9 or 10 different things we just saw. Okay, here's another example, or just kind of a working example that talks a little bit about this. Focuses probably a little bit more on profitability. This is the ever exciting product category of sealants, the silicone sealant industry, which I know everyone's excited about, but we have 3 different market segments that this company, you know, kind of works with. They're depicted here. One of which is the electronics, an electronics user or producer who they use sealants inside their products. The second one, the middle one, is this, they just call it the industrial market. And then the last one is a construction trade market for sealants. And you know, like caulkings and stuff like that, you'd seal doors with and things like that. Right? Now we've got 3 different market segments. Each of these 3 different market segments are reached in a different way, so each one has a different channel of distribution. But also each one is a different price point. They're sensitive on price in different ways. The construction users, businesses that use this product are willing to pay $6 a unit, while the industrial folks, businesses, are willing to pay $8 a unit, and the high-tech electronic component users are willing to spend as much as $10 per unit. Now, you can also imagine that their tolerances are probably quite different. The folks who are using it for internal electronics stuff probably need a better quality, a higher quality. The things that they're using it for are likely much more delicate and such. I could picture that happening for sure. But you kind of see how these different market segments are different, and you reach them differently. And then the data down below here kind of talks about the story as well, right? So it talks about demand in units. So think about this as something like market size. The construction trade space is 8 times larger than the electronic space, electronic market. 8 times. You have, again, these are in units. I'm not exactly sure how they define units, but 100 units in market demand, and again, those are maybe millions or whatnot. For electronics, 800 for construction, and industrial is somewhere in the middle. So remember that idea of size and sales volume? Like, you may not want to deal with a $6 customer when you could have a $10 customer, but there are 8 times as many $6 customers than there are $10 customers. So at the end of the day, if your company is producing the silicone sealant and you've got volume issues, who are you going to sell to? You're going to sell to the volume customers probably, because you need them as a base, right? They have to support everything else that you probably do if you're looking at the business model kind of idea of things. We have, and again, this is like fictitious. These are numbers like for a company, maybe something like the total for the company. We have market share numbers, unit volume numbers, and some different things like that. So you can kind of see where maybe some of these differences in market segments emerge. We have different, so in marketing, there's some things that we look at specifically. We look at MSE, which is marketing and sales expenses. It's like a line it captures, it's not really specific enough to show a lot of detail, but it captures sometimes the efficiency or the effectiveness of our dollars spent in marketing to sales. So marketing return on sales, marketing return on investments, a calculation that we'll produce for our friends in finance. Should let them mull over those numbers a little bit. And it's our attempt of saying, listen, you give us X amount of money, this is what we're going to return in sales as a result of your investment in our marketing activities. And that's how we sell it across the aisle to again, people in the other departments. So, but look at how more effective we are in these different things, or return on sales in particular. When I spend $1, in this market category, I get 4 back or something like that. The way we look at some of that. Okay, so again, which is the most attractive market segment? I know which one's the most profitable, but I probably can't live off of that market segment alone. I probably have to sell to all 3 of them to make my business model work. And how do I sell to all 3 of them? In this case, I'm using different distribution channels. In one case, I'm selling directly to my end user or to the company, right? In the other 2, I have intermediaries who are going to break the product up and resell it to the industrial buyers and the construction buyers. That's how we mimic that, how we create that system. Okay, so again, just kind of an example of looking at market segments kind of separately. One last thing that I'll show you, and again, this is sort of a textbook thing. They've expanded that 2x2 matrix a little bit, so don't get too thrown off here. We've got, again, up and down our relative strength of the company to meet the market segment's needs, and then market segment attractiveness. Now again, they've got they kind of messed with us a little bit. It's a 3x3 thing now instead of a 2x2. But it's the same axes, and the text will illustrate and talk about this idea of ranking market segments. So let's say we had 7 or 8 market segments that we went through the clustering stuff. We have this 6 or 7 market segments. And then we use those criteria. How large is it? How profitable is it? How much is it growing? How much competitive pressure is there? Is there a threat to substitutes? Can I differentiate myself in there? Do we strategically fit? There's like 8 or 9 different things we could evaluate each of our 7 different market segments on, score them, and then I could rank them. And again, this is just one of these deals where, okay, there's a market segment right here. It appears as though it has some pretty good attractiveness. It's not the highest, but it's not the lowest. Here's the kicker though. We're able to match their needs. We're able to meet their requirements because we have the capabilities to do so, right? We have strong ability to match what the market needs, and it's a pretty attractive one. So they rated the highest, and that will be our first market that we'll look to go into. That might be our core market that we actually look at. But simultaneously, there's 2 and there's 3. Now look, we don't maybe have these skills that they necessarily want. Maybe we can't differentiate ourselves real well. Or maybe we're not the best at the qualities or features that they want. But these are so attractive. These 2 market segments look so good to us, we want to go into them. So why don't we do this? Why don't we say this is going to be the core market segment that we're going to hit because we think we can make great market share here. We're going to be real profitable here. And then what if we go to these guys and they're kind of like adjacent markets or peripheral type lines of business for us? Right? Because they're super attractive, and maybe we're not going to be the highest market share. We're not going to be the #1 company serving 2 and 3, but we'll be in those markets. We'll participate in those markets because they're very attractive to us for whatever our scoring model said. Now these others, 4, 5, 6, 7. I don't know if we have the bandwidth to necessarily try to reach them right now. Remember, every time we try to reach a new market, it costs money. We have to create marketing plans. It's really sometimes hard to do. So maybe I won't do that, but at least for now, I know my strategy is to focus on that, and maybe secondarily, number 2, number 3. Even though we have strong reach in here, we can meet their needs. It's probably one of these illusionary type of things. One of these things that's not really a very attractive thing, but we've got good skills. And maybe that's not really where we want to be right now. And we're just going to have to bypass them. We'll let them go to somebody else. Maybe that's something that we do, because they're not very attractive in terms of our scoring model. Okay, so again, this is just kind of an example how we apply some of this, how you might use a model to do some of this work. Do y'all have any questions? Any thoughts? Any concerns? Matt, we're doing all right?
A lot of charts again this week.
You got what?
A lot of charts again this week.
A lot of charts. Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Better than a lot of
A lot of
words.
charts. All right, here. Got some, this is going to go out to everybody, this thing here. So you just need to pass those, there's a bunch there. There you go. Maybe pass those out, this whole bunch here. All right, this is just some general information. So this is a market industry report, a product category report for sun care. It just gives some general information about the sun care industry, and some of the trends and some of the things that are going on there. All right, but we're going to have 3 groups. I'm going to give you guys maybe 10 minutes or so to think about what we're doing here. We don't have a huge amount of time, so we'll have to transition here. And the groups, to make life easy, we have Group 1, or a group, right? Another group, and then another group. Does that work? 3 groups. Front and center, depending on where you're sitting, either left or right, and then the other, right? Okay? All right, so I'm going to hand you your group a packet here. There's going to be, I'm going to take one, but you have a company, all right? So you can huddle up. You've got a company. You have a company. Your group. And then you all have also a company. You all 3 have a company that participate in the sun care space, okay? So distribute those among your team, your groups, right? All right, and here's the deal. What I want you to do is I want you to, based on your company, and this is like, there's no perfect answer here, right? But as a group, I want you to construct the perfect customer profile, customer segment, customer profile for your company, okay? And then we'll come back. You'll report who it is. You'll describe who it is on the board, a representative of your group, okay? So you all get together, take probably 10 minutes or so, and look over that information, learn whatever you want about your company, and I want you to describe the perfect market segment that your company should try to reach. Okay, so y'all collaborate, go out in the hall if you want, do whatever you need to do. And then, so we're looking at probably 25 till. It'll give us about 5 to 10 minutes to wrap up.
Everybody good?
Yeah, exactly.
No way.
So we gotta choose. Is anybody use survey?
Choose one.
I do too.
You may know about your companies, you may not.
And then like,
I heard that. I saw it. That's good.
That's what I heard it on too. They're
still-
just cheaper than
Are
I'm
we-
using it like 2 months ago.
Are we choosing like
brand? There's like a-
1 through 6?
Isn't there one?
Searfield?
Out of these?
Yes, that
Are
You
we
choose whatever you want.
You can
Oh,
do
we
that.
just- we
I
just
can
take
do
the whole-
You
all of these?
that's just background information. That's just background information
And then we
about
just
your,
figure out what,
and then you've got a company. Your company has a history you may or may not know about, there's a little information there. They probably have an ideal market segment that is their go-to market segment. Who is that and why? Okay. I don't even know what company you have, I didn't know. No idea. I don't know. Each of these 3 companies are interesting, I think. For various reasons.
Opportunity. I don't know.
do what?
I'm always using sunscreen, I have fair skin.
That's my house. Oh, this one.
It's such a nice thing. I'm always on
They're all separate, yeah, they're all, they just started back in one again. Actually,
Oh.
sunscreen.
Well, you all have a sunscreen company.
it's just
All
which
3 of
company
you.
in particular.
You have a different one.
But the thing is, it says, the first number 6, it
What's
says
different?
eco-friendly and modern innovations. But
We
then
all have
the
different
second,
Yeah.
No, he's missing.
no,
What are you talking about? What are you doing?
No, it's a stressful day.
there's already a lot of numbers on the pages to begin with, we don't need more confusion.
So somebody in your group will need to go up to the board when we're ready to write and describe the customer
I say
profile.
5 words.
So Matt would probably be the one to do that, right, Grace?
Yep, that's what I was
Okay. No,
thinking.
I'm kidding.
I'm not gonna do that.
So good, boss.
Oh, I'm not going.
You went super far.
I'm okay.
You already dressed for it.
Yeah.
Just here for the good time.
We're supposed to.
I just keep seeing
So based on this, we're trying to get one of these numbers,
Okay.
I think.
No, just use, that's all just information about the company. You need to know the
Wait,
customer
this-
profile.
Who's our
One of the first thing that you got was just an overview of the sun care space. The second thing you got is just about your company.
Okay.
Focus on the company stuff, I would do, but with a background of what maybe the sun care industry is all about. I mean, maybe you use some of that stuff, maybe you choose one of those, maybe you don't. I don't know. Your company, or your company.
Yeah, it said lifestyle products.
I feel like
Promote it on
if it isn't what I'm thinking,
Well, that's what it says.
if it's that like mood.
He's got some corny
Yeah.
stuff with things like that.
Like, I guess it comes out like shaving cream, but it's
Yeah,
not
it's got those like
That's what I'm
cute
thinking.
little
But
trendy
you get them on
bottles.
there.
It's in like Ulta
I'm
and
starting to
Target.
figure out TikTok and stuff.
Oh,
to get 'em
well,
on there.
how
So you're
do you
thinking
know
like Gen
this
Z and
market
younger.
segment?
And like this classic with,
Girls.
yeah, it's gonna be like teenage girls.
Yeah.
Collaborate with your group.
But no, not worry.
And yeah, soccer moms might fit into that.
Yeah, sure. Carrots.
That'd be all happy.
I'm like, it's like,
Like in mine, that's great.
It's a formulation, so I'm guessing
yeah,
it's
it's
a
definitely,
I
it
remember
looks
it's
like
like
kind of
I got
expensive, so it's.
I was probably the same,
like
but-
a little.
So would that be physical business or would that be?
I'm
We're
thinking
talking,
it's
we're talking like it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Not
personally,
I
but.
mean, it's $22 for a little bottle of whipped
I do like
Yeah.
I think only would be grossed out by the
They're
I see more like
Yeah, and I also feel like,
But so like we had to pick one where we all agree.
yeah.
We like
And I feel like,
I go to the beach to make sure I get burned.
Not me, I'm very big on sunscreen.
I'd go retail over like probably like professional.
Not me.
Yeah, we could go professional because the dermatologist are good.
Oh,
No, because in Germany many are very.
And the tea
like,
that I was like, what? You use that what? A lot. No, you said what? What is this?
I feel like
What did
we've
she
seen
say?
it on
A what? A joke?
Yeah.
What, say it
I feel
again?
like they have it in like certain outfitters.
No. You
Yeah.
said joke funny. You said
Whipped
joke. No, that's not what you said. Yes, I said joke.
I am curious to where,
You said, bro.
I don't know if it's right here, but also sales
She
come
makes
from.
fun of me because I
Because I
said.
remember in that case study, it was like discussing about
Cottage
market
cheese.
share
She was like, yeah, but
in like certain areas.
cottage
So, like,
cheese on my Greek yogurt. And I was like, what do you put on your Greek
So I
yogurt?
was wondering like, you know, like the retail. It's a professional, because you know,
That's like a main area that they're trying to
But
go.
then again,
It's like yoga, stay
Am I gonna buy something?
Spin
Like the first thing you're gonna do
going on in their life, so that sunscreen is what you're gonna do, like if it's outside.
You're gonna go with the book, you're not gonna feel
Sunscreen on you.
the application that
I
they're really
spent
going
$20
with.
on this.
I sat on a stationary bike all day.
Maybe.
Especially for the fall.
I feel like it's more for
Get a wider audience.
For sure.
The way I
Definitely.
think would be the buy-in user.
I don't.
Based on this guy over here, no man is using this product.
The big sunscreen, come on.
Our data is based solely
The
on
white man, who's gonna be buying the product.
Yeah, I'm inclined to disagree with you.
Are you guys buying this product?
Not right now. But like, you know what I mean?
Creating
Women?
Or women that make sure they tell everyone they're Irish.
I don't know what we're on, but I didn't really from their game, like half.
We're feeling to a specific, we're narrowing down, we're gonna make it so narrow that there's gonna be one person that we're selling it to. That's it, just one person.
Like putting more money into like trends.
Our entire market segment is one person, we're gonna narrow it down to that.
If it's eco-friendly, there you go.
This is literally
From like influencers.
So, but say what?
Alright, so,
Yeah, so the big trends, you think at the end, some insights, you think you guys want to focus more on
so the thing is, like, is there an order?
because we all have.
Like, why is it 1%?
I'm not really sure if it's again, I don't know, like, would it appreciate us?
Four trends here.
I didn't even read that part.
Number 6 again.
Yeah, exactly.
They emphasize like the whole aspect.
Oh, pressure on brands like Sunbelt.
I'm assuming so, you know, I'm reading too much into the wrong thing.
So you could throw on
Moms out there at the beach or whatever.
Read safe.
it says initially compared to other dermatologists brands.
That means like you can wear it and like if you go snorkeling, you can put it on and it's not gonna damage the reef.
About 5
The
minutes.
oils in it.
Conscious about you.
I would say like she said.
Well, when you go, if you're
If
like
you go
on
into like a sensitive wildlife,
Your old like.
well, no, if you go into a sensitive wildlife
if you go
area,
into
you
like a
struggle.
coral reef, you're not supposed to wear like oily sunscreen on a coral reef because it damages the coral.
So it's, you know, those types of things.
Yeah, why are you guys looking at me like I'm crazy? Like,
Wait, what did she say?
it says that it's like reef safe, and he was like, "What do you mean?" Like,
Yeah, it did say environmental stuff.
yeah. And then he didn't understand, so I was explaining the coral stuff, and
Everyone's looking at me like that.
We gotta start swimming next season.
Okay, I got it.
We gotta start crossing off Irish
However,
We're saying like let's start.
Have you had young
especially you don't do only adults. Some of the adults when we have
okay with spending
a
more
little more
training
adults take
products
care of their bodies.
from influencers,
I
interests,
know me personally, I didn't start taking it.
Easily influenced.
Easily influenced.
I definitely
Suckers. Gullible.
Sad about
Highly susceptible.
because everyone.
It's a nice way to say it.
I feel like these people are like more
You know,
interested in
probably
like
a big audience, especially
outdoors
when they're,
I feel like
Well, I
they're
think
not really
everyone
wanting
that's in the
to
sunscreen
like
market is outdoors.
I feel like they're buying
like
it
stuff with,
because it's like a trendy thing.
same type of
It's
chemicals
not
that they utilize,
like
but
the
you have
necessity
type
of
of bonus that.
sunscreen.
Yeah, because keep in mind, it's also like, you know, it's only an SPF 30. I think it'd be a good
Oh, is it really?
Yeah, the product that we're talking about is the classic with 30, right?
Yeah, 30's not really.
No, it's not the greatest. No, you're not getting, if you.
Isn't it like everything over 45?
I feel like it's
Yeah, but still, that's still below 45.
Yeah, season
I think
it's more than just sunscreen, like you can sell it all year, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we have all of
Everything else
the products that we sell.
So I don't think you're not really doing it for the sunscreen protection. You're doing it because it feels better, it's trendier.
We good.
That's what the product have washed. It should be wider than the other.
Yeah, keep going. Alright.
We're gonna start?
So you said you had an idea for
Like it.
making
Take
it
the
lower.
initiative.
What would be your idea for kind of segment it?
Whenever you have a representative who you have an idea what you want your profile to be,
Yeah, I thought
head on
Sorry
up.
about that, I didn't mean that.
How was it?
Let it go. It's not
It just has the right question. It's like, you know, this is something that we don't focus all of our attention.
they have other products that are really
I don't know.
Yeah, so.
There's
There's a section about making it more appealing.
It's very anti-sunscreen.
No, it's not anti-sunscreen.
What was that in?
The only one that's the hydration shower, which it doesn't leave a white residue.
That's so good, right?
Yeah, that's about right. Adventurous, yeah.
Diverse. So trying to get more specific to users.
My mom never smelled like that. Too late for that.
You conversing with the talks like
Everybody's
not like this.
I feel like that's literally every conversation with myself.
Yeah, I don't know what
She's
it
the
is.
game last night.
You gotta help me with that because reword conversation.
It's like,
I work about the skills.
what it is.
That's a pretty hard
Oh, yeah.
All together, like that.
I think the range or SPF, I think it says,
Oh, budget.
just that every day.
It's your profile.
No offense to
I wish I could say I know.
Alright, looks like Copper Tone is stepping up to the plate.
The young adults, we're gonna focus on the teens. I will put more up there, but quick question.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, no one noticed my new outfit
Market
yesterday.
segments for certain. Who's wearing, who's for
I
the
got new outfit.
It's not like every day I have like
Choose one.
your outfit.
No, not you. I'm talking about the guys that I see every single day at work. They all noticed I
For
had
CeraVe, you know, CeraVe's origin is like.
What do you like? Cause I saw you. I didn't comment on your outfit. 'Cause I didn't know.
Well, yeah, 'cause I
Their
usually
product
don't, I usually
categories are all about
in between work and school.
Gotcha.
I usually change, but I did yesterday because my outfit didn't get enough.
Yeah, I mean, they.
We don't have a
Just
record
assume.
of closet to know that it's
Every day.
Okay, but here's the problem. What happens if we say, oh, I like your new outfit? It's not.
That's never like a bad thing.
It's never a bad
If
thing.
you just say I like your outfit,
The best way to do it
It's like
is
the retinol, that's what they do.
Just pretend you're blind. Oh, sorry, my prescription's so old.
Young adults, just for.
Am I right?
Yeah.
Dermatologist approved.
just turn
So, you do what you.
Oh, no, we was discussing it, we was all putting it
No,
together.
we gotta get going.
Oh, okay, okay.
Hold up for me.
Yeah, but that's the day I'm
But I'm
flying
just
back.
saying that.
Trust your gut, trust your gut. And
So-
we'll back
Oh,
from
can you
100%.
imagine
Yeah, I'm flying back on the 22nd.
Wait, what's
copper boat
It's like
customer
what is it?
buying a bunch of CeraVe products?
Where's that?
I will.
See what I'm saying?
I already told my mom.
That's, so the CeraVe customer is gonna
When I
be
saw the email, I first thought it was
something similar to what the current customer does. Yeah, so they're gonna leverage the
Yes.
He's in my phone.
What is the graduate student association?
Because I don't know.
Vice President.
What is it?
It's, if you have issues, come there, you can voice your concerns about, the graduate programs and stuff.
Everybody got
Well, the problem is you can't talk about specific professors, it's the programs.
Vermont doesn't get a lot of sun.
That's the problem.
Certainly no
What's your partner? Yes, that's the only class that's really.
Like you can voice your concerns about specific professors, but there's not much we can do about it, because that's what the program.
Hawaiian Island ad or whatever. It's like,
We can do stuff with the grad students, we can't do anything with the professors.
but now I live Berkeley.
We're working on that, actually.
Really? If I didn't
in my house.
That's actually next semester's main bill, is, focusing on getting that.
Is your market segment worried about
Oh, yeah.
Does it work?
worried about when your market segment goes suntan if the UV is like 9 or higher?
Yes, but then they'd be lathered in it.
In fact, would that draw them out more?
Yeah. Oh my God,
Think about like,
There's a high UV, we'll have
like, if it's not 6 or higher, I'm not going out there. Some people will say, right? And there's no, it's not worth it, and there's no way I'm putting SPF over 30 or over 40, right?
And that's
What's the use?
I'm not sweating.
No, but the practice.
Right. Is that your market segment?
Right, so I have no idea, but I don't know.
Here, I'm gonna show you.
Because it's the younger people, like, they don't care, they're just gonna go out, they're not looking. True.
If the moms are at the soccer
That's not
game,
true.
they gotta be out there anyway.
You're just gonna like post a picture of the bottle on your social media.
Exactly, these not 7 or 10 people, so waiting outside.
They got the phone, they got ice cream, and they got the.
I know.
I know you shouldn't have to, but I do.
Right.
Well, I haven't done that
Yeah.
on all.
Okay, good, I
So I
like
take
that.
no responsibility for whether or not.
And your market
I don't
segment
even remember
is
this chapter going.
Beach Boys.
Oh, I know.
So what do you use?
About emails.
It's been around forever, right?
I've got like, I've been getting sent
You're out on the tennis court.
the vice president. So it's grad student association and stuff like that.
Send me that.
Look, dermatologist.
He's trying to get the whole organization back up and running, because after COVID has to shut down.
Well, I guess I can't even do it right now because I don't have
Yeah, go somewhere.
But I'll just say.
Yeah, I mean, I can.
Sometimes the start is events for grad students.
Yes.
So like, you go
Alright, let's wrap this up.
Grand Strand Brewing.
How we doing? Alright.
Yeah, have off drinks. It's great. That's so much better than we have at the best.
Alright, have you ever heard of the new sunscreen that came out this year called Vacation? Anybody, other than this group, anybody, Vacation?
I had heard about, I had to look it up and remind myself
Remind
about
yourself.
it, but.
Alright, so this last year, there are 3 really big companies out there, Neutrogena, Sunbum, and I think Coppertone. I think those are the 3 largest market shares. I don't know that it's reflected on that. Okay, and every year there's an annual report, or the industry looks at the market share data, and they track brands that are new threats, new up-and-comers. This year on the list was Vacation. This year they crossed over, I don't know what $1 million mark, but they are on the radar now when they were not before 2024 season. So that's why this group is talking about a vacation. So what's the key thing about vacation? What makes them who they are? Anything about them?
The name.
It's like a high quality
Okay, and what's the one kind of cool packaging innovation that they have?
Whipped sunscreen.
Whipped sunscreen, like cool
It's like a
whipped
whipped
style,
cream.
whipped, so they might not have been the first, but they have that, right? It's kind of innovative, it's new. Now, what type of market segment are they gonna attract with those products?
White girls.
All right, white girls.
Yeah, so we were like thinking like young Gen Z and younger like girls that like, you know, and
Girls?
yeah.
I swear, man, that's quirky white soccer mom.
See, he's a soccer mom
You're a
market.
huge white soccer mom. So have you ever heard your mom on the sideline talking with other moms? What are they talking about? Nonsense. Like, that's sunscreen. That's new sunscreen. Nonsense.
I can see the
Drinking
commercial
mom.
now. I can see it.
They're drinking mom water, applying.
They're over there, like, falling over on each other on the sideline.
I do too, and I'm
They're
embarrassed
so
to say that.
good, so.
There are no carbs, there's no calories.
Right.
I'm blushing now, Robert. Alright, so, my mom water. So, okay, that capture, so they're taking selfies, they're all about the image, all about, what's their SPF level? 30. SPF 30. So you're gonna get all the ultra rays and a little bronzing and a pick. Basically, right? Okay, that's who you think. Copper tone. What do we got with copper tone?
They've been around for years.
Yes.
1944 is when they first started.
Yes.
They cover the gamut. They're trying to fit a little bit of everything for everybody because they're covering the individuals, you know, they're active, they cover the families, from the babies to the moms that are out there at the ball fields with their kids, you know. But they also have the products that are out there for the ones that are really suntan, you know, conscious as far as like wanting the real nice tans and stuff. But they've always tried to be very budget friendly.
So their approach has been much more kind of I don't want to say mass market, but very generalized. I mean, they have a product for lots of different, they have little baby products to older products. High SPF, low SPF, they've got a full range, full line. I like the idea you picked up on the budget thing, but they've been around forever, absolutely forever. They were sold from there to somebody else in 2019, I think, but very traditional kind of. One, you would go by the aisle and you'd always see them on the aisle in the store, and you know it's a trusted brand. It's always there.
Large market share. I mean, large shelf space.
A lot of shelf space, a lot of market share. I mean, one of the big players. Okay, but you would maybe say generic almost in their approach to market segmentation, in that they would have a broad appeal to a lot of audiences, not only whatever the characterizations you made, but to lots of others too. Okay, all right, number 3, CeraVe. Now, anybody who's familiar with the brand CeraVe? What do you think of first when you hear CeraVe? What types of products?
Moisturizing.
Skin healing.
Skin healing, I like that, moisturizing.
Talk to him.
So, you know, like I don't want to steal your thunder, but one of my impressions of CeraVe is that they're more clinical, more therapeutic, more restorative. You know, they have a lot of retinol products and a lot of stuff like that. So for them to be in the sun care space, what type of customer are they going to attract, do you think?
So we said about people with irritable, dry, or acne-prone skin, it allows them to be able to use sunscreen. So I see the other companies and they're kind of lacking because they don't offer anything that's really, since they're really feed for the skin, rather than just giving it a tan, mom's getting a tan or anything, So we're not worried about that, but we are worried about it because it's a growing market segment. And we want to expand to niche markets for people who are looking for more skin sensitive products, they would use sunscreen. So,
like that.
and we're also dermatologist approved.
Safe for all, yeah, that's a huge thing, right? I mean, at
Yeah.
least they are more clinical in that sense. Price points, I don't know, but I'm guessing a little bit more expensive, especially than our friends in Coppertone.
It
Right.
didn't give exact, but they're definitely still aimed to be affordable even with that dermatologist backing. They said that they still like to appeal to that broader audience,
Okay.
but it didn't give specifics.
All right, but you can see like they have certain skills and capabilities that they're leveraging this dermatology stuff. They're known for, again, skin health. I mean, that's kind of something they're known for. I don't think Coppertone, when you look at their, I don't know, this has been years, but if you look at ads for Coppertone, it's people on the beach, dark, just playing volleyball and all of that. And I don't think that's the same type of ads you'd see CeraVe running.
Now, people merge from Coppertone into CeraVe after they go to the dermatologist.
That's fair enough. So, all right, we're about out of our time. I appreciate you all being here. It's good seeing everybody. Had a good week, had a fun week. We'll see you all next week.